Okay, we ready to go? I guess we will declare this meeting officially open. First item on our agenda tonight is a presentation by Jeff Littleton from Moosewood Ecological Services. I listened to a presentation from Jeff while we were at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions. His name, I think I mentioned.
Yeah.
A month or more ago when I read that he was been hired by the Nashville Conservation Commission to do some work for them.
That's correct.
And I think I asked him to come and kind of talk to us a little bit about what he does and what he can offer to a town like ourselves, because I think it pertains to some of the issues as we look at how do we go through putting together a plan to protect parcels and how to determine which areas in town are important to protect or more important. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff and let you go from there.
Thanks a lot, Andy. Well, I hope this evening we're going to have a nice dialogue between all of us so I can learn a little bit more about your commission.
Excuse me a moment, though.
Yes.
The camera doesn't seem to be on. I mean, we want them on camera.
Well, we got on air, but
Is that a main camera?
It's on
yeah,
there.
they're either operating it or not. So
Yeah, it's on
yeah,
there.
generally, all of our meetings are televised, and
It's
we're
on
on air by the light, but these cameras may or may not start moving. So
We'll continue.
Well,
take her from there.
it's well,
All right. Well, again, my name is Jeff Littleton. I'm a conservation ecologist and principal of Moosewood Ecological Services. I'm also adjunct faculty at Keene State College and Antioch, New England Graduate School, where I teach at Keene State. I teach mammal tracking course. It's a community education course open to students as well as the general public, and also teach a natural resource inventory class at Antioch, New England Graduate School. The whole crux, the whole purpose of my company is to develop conservation planning for communities, for organizations such as land trusts, nonprofits. I work a lot for conservation commissions. That makes up for the bulk of my clients. I work for federal and state agencies as well. And I work for a few private landowners sometimes. And what do I mean by conservation planning? Basically, we do everything from large scale to small scale. We do community planning on a town-wide basis, natural resource inventory and conservation plans for towns to help identify specific sites within their community where they should start putting their conservation dollars. Where is it going to be most effective? Where are they going to get the biggest bang for their buck? This is one of the things that we do. And then we take it all the way down to the fine scale, where we actually conduct the inventories on parcels of land, plants, animals, wildlife habitats, natural communities. We blow it up. We look at how that parcel fits in with the surrounding landscape, what other attributes that are surrounding that area that are going to help identify management planning that's going on the property itself. So we work on various different levels, from the community side all the way down to the parcel-based, and even blow it up even to large areas such as watersheds that may cover several different towns. I met Andy at the last, this past November, a month ago now, or more, at the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions meeting, where I was delivering a presentation. They always deliver a presentation on different aspects of conservation planning. This year I was talking about a town-wide natural community classification project that I was doing in Ackworth, which is north of Keene, about an hour, 30 minutes if you're a crow. That's one of the projects that I was working on there, and actually was talking with Andy quite a bit about. And he was in the presentation, and so he heard most of that. But what I'm interested in doing this evening is learning a little bit more about your commission and your town. One of the things that I did a little bit of research before I came here, and realized I read over your master plan, not the entire thing, really looked at the natural resources section of it, which was quite extensive, I have to say. So I perused through that to sort of see where your community is at your conservation planning phases. So I noticed that you have a series of maps that have been developed, natural resource maps covering all sorts of realms, agricultural soils, various other attributes of your landscape, fragmentation analysis, very important piece to understand for conservation planning, all this stuff. And I noticed that in there you've started to identify some different sites for conservation and stuff. So you have been working on a conservation plan and a natural resource inventory for your town, which is a great step. You're moving ahead, it looks like. So one of the things that I would like to address this evening with you, and there's a little agenda in there, there's only about 3 questions on there. But one of the things is, what type of natural resource inventory conservation planning have you already done? I looked through your master plan. Looks like you guys are going in the right direction, starting to identify where these things are on the landscape. So what other sort of studies has the town conducted? Maybe say on a town forest, areas such as this. Sort of at what level have you been investigating?
There is one parcel in town that we purchased, a 560-acre parcel now called Horse Hill Nature Preserve.
Okay, this was a place you were referring to me at the meeting.
That parcel has been extensively studied in the 4 years that we have owned it. A master plan was done with a suggested list of suggested uses. We then hired Bay State Forestry, who also then hired Ian Poole.
Oh, okay, yes.
And they did a study of the forestry and ecological of that particular site. Then it went through another year's committee meeting and finally arriving at a definitive plan that kind of narrowed down as to what should take place and where on the site, considering all the facts that we'd gathered over the 4 years. And about 4 months ago, the town council reviewed that definitive plan and gave the Conservation Commission management responsibility for that parcel, with the exception of 25 acres that potentially could become athletic complex. Mm-hmm. We then reached an agreement with the then Parks Department director that we would manage that 25 acres until such time that an athletic complex was ever developed. We then created a subcommittee to manage or to advise us on the management of that parcel. And Bob is our representative on that subcommittee. They have been working for a couple months now. The major emphasis right now is access to it.
Okay.
There are some old logging roads on it. Some are in pretty bad shape. There were some additional trails, walking trails that wanted to be done, and they've already started doing them. We are expecting a brontosaurus to show up out there in the next couple weeks. And then we have some major access work to do next summer in one area so that we can get emergency vehicle access to it. Other parcels in town, the master plan that was done, I sat on that one, and I guess my emphasis has always been open space management since I've been involved in the commission, so I kind of directed the planning board group and advised on that, and was very pleased to see the amount of support for looking at doing something like that. To a certain extent, we haven't done an awful lot. As the master plan said, there's a large parcel in the northwest corner of town that we ought to turn into a 500-acre contiguous parcel if we can do so. Mm-hmm. We as a Conservation Commission were already involved in trying to do that. It started out in my discovering that we had a tax-deeded parcel out there. We then got the town to approve that as Greater Woods Town Forest. We, as the Conservation Commission, found some funds, and we purchased another 90 acres next to it. And then we kind of ran out of money. And some of the other landowners had some tremendous ideas as to what their land was worth. But over the years, we have continued to try to meet that goal. And in fact, on Thursday of this week, we will appear before the town council as the final step for purchasing another 70 acres, which will turn Greater Woodstown Forest into about 380 acre parcel. As to why we concentrated in on that area, just, I guess I would say, kind of a common sense approach that it had a large amount of wetlands. We had a core area to start with, and we had the possibility of getting in there and doing some purchasing or easements or gifting before it got developed.
Sure, sure.
Because our town is projected to reach build-out in 10 years.
Okay. I've been reviewing Regional Planning Commission's build-out analysis report.
So with that kind of history, I'm going to say that I've been emphasizing this year as we went over our goals for 2007, latching on to coming up with an open space action plan, taking a look once again at what the town owns, developing some parcels of interest, if you will, around town based upon the initial draft I've done up, and then the other members are going to be adding to it, is looking at what can we expand that seems to be of importance on a conservation level, what parcels could provide us with some trail connections to hook up some of the parcels that the town owns or that are owned by, condo associations and so forth. I worked with the NRPC to update their map. I don't know if you saw that on their site or not, but in fact, I have a copy of it here, showing town-owned parcels, privately owned parcels, and kind of working from that. The goal being, I certainly hope, that we'll come up with an action plan with a definite list of parcels. We'll have an idea as to what it's going to cost, and where do we go from here. And I have to say I'm very supportive of these gentlemen over the years and listening to me and saying, hey, we ought to do this. Eber in particular in the upcoming year has picked a project of getting a little more detailed, and correct me if I get it right, Eber, wildlife habitat, what is here, what's on these parcels, what are critical areas, kind of working off of the wildlife action plan.
Sure.
With all of that information and looking at it and coming up with it in the local level.
Well, that's a great tool right there in and of itself, just looking at the wildlife.
The habitat in particular, as to what habitat is provided by that piece of property.
Exactly.
In other words, what's there that we don't see, that we don't know about.
As we got, obviously we have the Sauhegan River that comes through the middle of town, which Sauhegan River Local Advisory Committee is involved with. The Merrimack River butts us on the east, and then we have this thing called Babusick Brook that runs through town. I don't know how many miles that runs, but it's one of those meandering brooks. And I think we've come to realize over time that has, even though a lot of that parcels along and were given as back lots to the town by developers, that we're realizing that they weren't just trashy parcels, they were pieces of land that do have importance, particularly when the floods came in this year and and started gathering in those meandering brooks. You begin to realize it gives you a little bit of buffer. So, and our town, as the master plan said, citizens have kind of indicated that they like the rural nature of the town. the open spaces are important to them. But we also hear that, particularly like in Horse Hill, that was a particular, kind of a unique parcel because the town put up $4 million for it. And now they want to get on the parcel and do things, to be able to have access to it, to be able to hike it, to ride horses on it and do these other kinds of activities in a manner that makes sense. It contains a blue heron rookery.
Nice.
It has a nice sandy area with a huge white pine swamp. There's half the swamp is on Horse Hill, and the other half was already protected by conservation land. Turtle nesting area. My understanding is that Blanding's turtles were sighted and actually photographed in the area this year.
River otter,
And
river otters.
yeah, well, one huge long list of
Yeah.
wildlife, but
So Blanding's turtle were documented this year?
yeah,
or no?
in
That's
2
fantastic.
occasions, yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of sightings this year.
Yeah, it seemed to be.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah,
I talked to,
a lot of people are
"Oh,
talking
yeah,
about
we
it."
got Blanding's turtles in our town. We spotted them.
That's a
But
significant
so
find.
I guess we haven't done a lot of formal established planning. A little bit of it's been, seat of the pants, and this looks like an area we ought to do something with, and here's the opportunity to do something. And
Certainly.
kind of like maybe we ought to get a little more formal in our approach with all the data that's available, and maybe we're overlooking something. Obviously, we've gone along, where the border lines are for each of these parcels, get your thinking going, but maybe there's some others that we need to look at, because time is short.
Back many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, Amanda Stone, she worked in conjunction with the National Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
And back at that time, what we tried to do was to identify the areas that we thought were important. And going out on field trips, we had probably 10 different groups with maybe 3, 4 in each of the groups that would go out, look at the wetlands that we were responsible for, and try to identify what was there for wildlife, what importance it had as sort of a ranking. You're probably familiar with the way that it's set up anyway, and a ranking.
It's the prime
program
wetlands
for
concept.
Sort of, yes, like,
Yeah.
and, but it only went so far,
So you have this information on a variety of parcels in town? Are these already conserved lands?
We should have it on record here. We do have it
Yeah.
on record.
Okay.
It was done with, prior to my time, so boy, that makes it in the early 90s, Eber.
I think so.
Yeah, where they gathered a lot of data using, basically the goal was to see if they could identify some prime wetlands.
Oh, okay.
We have the data. It was done. The interns, I guess, were available, and then funds and people and time ran out, and it kind of got put away.
Sure.
We tried to bring it out a couple of years ago and look over it, and actually, one of our members who's not here tonight, that's his goal for this year, is to get back and look at it again and see, what sense it makes, or what information is there, what can we do with that kind of thing. So a lot of the wetlands parcels, right now, you couldn't expand a buffer on it because the building's a little too close to them, but as you see in many towns, but there still are other areas, and I think Doug's emphasis on it is that even if the wetland is surrounded, it would help for us to understand, the function and the value of that wetland, and should we, keep a particular eye on it.
Exactly.
Trying to get a little more conscious of what's out there in town, and hopefully get more active in seeing that it is maintained or protected if necessary.
Okay. Well, it sounds like folks are working on all sorts of different levels, as most communities that I work with. It starts with identifying certain areas that you think are important, and going out in some form or fashion with groups of folks to see what's actually out there on your town-owned lands and on parcels of land that are private. And one of the first steps that I work with communities, because a lot of places don't realize how much information they actually have, because some things just get sort of stuck away in files, is the compilation and review and synthesis of all this information. What does it really mean? You know, because you have site-specific information that Stone with RPC and the groups went out and was gathering. You have information that you have about particular parcels of interest. You know, so these are on all different scales. So if you're, one of the first steps is to bring all this information together, decide the different scales where they are, where the sites are that some of the site-specific information has been attained. Okay, then you start to get an idea of the full breadth of information that you have in your town. When doing open space planning, another one of the next steps that we go with is using existing information, the natural resource information of which you've been gathering. See it in the plan. You take all this information, you throw it into what's called a co-occurrence modeling. Fish and Game did that prior to releasing the Wildlife Action Plan. It's basically just throwing all your identified natural resource data in, and it shows hotspots. It shows where they're all layering up the most. And these show discrete areas in your town, okay? Small areas, big areas. That's a first step in identifying where are all these important resources for your town and how do they layer up, how do they stack up. And then you can start to identify certain areas to start focusing on. So it's this tiered system of trying to figure out maybe where some other areas of interest besides the places that you've chosen, as you suggested. What if there's some places out there that you're missing? By developing this model, this assessment model, you can start to understand how certain areas stack up to each other quantitatively.
One item that I know Eber's mentioned it, and it's come up a number of times, is, you know, we've kind of looked at this spot, and this spot, but then we've got to look how the wildlife connects from one spot to the other. Maybe they're here, but the Sauhegan River's over there. How are they getting back and forth? Those kinds of things that kind of broadening our view at times.
Some of those areas, those wildlife corridors or movement areas, some are predictable, some are not so much. A lot of your hunters in town may have started realizing where some of these places are. They are very critical. One of the problems with trying to identify some of these places, and you really got to get down on the ground to do the field research to really figure this out. But you can predict some areas. Lots of animals use streams and river corridors because it's an easy way of going from A to B, and it's an identifiable feature on the landscape. Ridge lines are used a lot too. You know, they use landscape features such as this, such as we used to use a long time ago. Now we have GPS though.
We hope. Walt and I were GPSing today and still trying to get it in the computer the right way, or out of the computer the right way.
Let me ask you, where do farms, agriculture fit into this? I've been told by the Department of Agriculture that when you stop to think about it, the farms in the country feed about 75% of the wildlife habitat. Is that sort of a statement that
I haven't actually heard that figure come out, but I think they play a vital role, especially for towns such as yours. I think you have Vesper sparrow and grasshopper sparrows, which are listed species that are going to be utilizing these grasslands. On the wildlife side, they're very important for wildlife. On the agricultural side, they're extremely important because our small farms are being lost to development at an alarming rate. And some of these places are prime farmland areas. These places that once you develop them, you're not going to revert it back to a farm. And it's the prime farmland areas that we really want to try to protect for future purposes. But
one thing about prime farmlands that I see is they're always looking at soil. Mm-hmm. The soil is the determination of a prime farmland, which basically, I mean, I have a farm, mm-hmm. and I know I feed a lot of wildlife habitat, and we feed a lot of wildlife.
You gotta get your.
But the whole thing is, it is not prime agricultural land. We don't really have prime agricultural land in Merrimack. it's bony. It's the soil is not that thick.
Yeah.
But we do have agricultural land that doesn't need that sort of soil. Trees, fruit, vine crops, they don't need that river-type soil, really. So, I mean, I was just wondering about that.
Well, I think that the grasslands, the agricultural lands, and when I think of agricultural lands, I'm thinking of more open fields, hay fields, orchards, that I think they're very important for a variety of wildlife. Some are very common. You know, you got deer coming, visiting these areas, turkey. You got your whole slew of fox and coyote that you don't want around, and your fishers that are taking off your chickens and stuff like this. But I think they play a vital role. You know, traditionally, New Hampshire didn't have all these open grasslands, and then we populated the area, and then we had a lot of open space here, and now it's reverting back. So the grasslands are declining in the area, looking back through the couple hundred centuries. But they play a vital role in how these animals are moving throughout. They certainly do. A lot of them move right along the edge of these fields. A lot of the fox and coyote using these. So you could think of something like that as a simple little wildlife corridor, an edge of a field. Because they utilize these areas, they may just be right inside. I followed tracked bear, utilizing these areas right along the edge.
And I've even seen turtles go in and build their nests. Matter of fact, last year.
Oh, in fields?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, those are prime places for turtles. Wood turtles use these areas for thermoregulation and for feeding. So they generally find them in riparian areas of rocky streams, on their cut banks. So they come out, they emerge, and they disperse throughout the landscape. And then a lot of turtles are used in agricultural fields, these old sand and gravel pits. Even if it's just something that's a small pit, say on a farm, they'll utilize these areas. They're using the fields themselves. Again, the wood turtles use these areas for thermoregulation, and then they're feeding along the edge within these areas. So, you know, it's all about scale. Okay, what sort of type of critters are we talking about? Turtles utilize them a lot. Frogs and salamanders, not so much. But northern leopard frogs, they may emerge from your big grassy wetlands and end up being found in fields nearby. You know.
I know we're talking about the wildlife corridor and the Horse Hill Nature Preserve that Bob is working with. That we were talking about where the brontosaurus is going in to take and build a trail through.
Mm-hmm.
That in order for the amphibians to go from one side of the road to the other, so that they're not bothered, they have an area that they can go through. So we were thinking of some type of a tunnel in that, when that road goes in, that will allow for the transportation of the wildlife, the amphibians.
UMass is doing a lot of research on using tunnels, and these are more heavily populated areas that have a lot of vehicle traffic on them. So those are working in certain areas. You know, there's a lot of research going on those. So that's a great idea. You know, there again, what's your scale of your wildlife corridor? You know, is it a bear or is it a spotted salamander? And it's a big difference. It's a big difference. Most of the time when you hear about wildlife corridors in general, it's always focused on the large mammals, the moose, the deer, the fox, the bear, things such as this. But you know, I think that's a great idea. You guys are building a tunnel there to.
Well, we brought that up.
Yeah, or thinking
Seems
about
like
doing
it's
it.
something that's sort of important
Yeah.
when we do this, that we allow for that.
Yeah, you know, it's one of the things that I do too is adaptive land management planning. You're always going to acquire new information over time, and to always incorporate that into your management planning allows you to be adaptive, allows you to look at your management strategies to see are they effective, are they working, or are they not working. So how should we change this? And as you gather new information, how can you change your management planning? So it's always good to update management planning. Rule of thumb, sort of I say every 10 years. You know, sometimes something may come up before that. You stumble on a rare species for some reason. Well, you might want to take an immediate measure to start looking at how should you manage for that species while you're still maintaining, you know, the other parts of the management planning for the property. How can you keep all these land uses together while not infringing upon the most sensitive parts of properties. And so that's one of the ways that I go about doing what I call the fine scale analyses, or the ecological assessments of properties, such as, it sounds like what Ann did out at Horse Hill, is looking at this as ecological land management planning. You know, where are your vernal pools that are out there that are really critical for your spotted salamanders and who knows, maybe marbled salamanders, the blue spotted Jefferson complex that might be out there that are listed. And so it's a good idea to try to keep that adaptive management planning in mind as you're working with your management planning for parcels, like I said, as new information is acquired in time. Now, one of the things that is useful when you're looking at certain parcels, if you have an idea, which sounds like you do, there's certain parcels out there that you're very interested in. And it sounds like you're also working in the right direction of conservation planning is at the heart of building on your existing conservation lands. That is building a reserve system and then trying to connect these areas. That's the way to go about great conservation planning. Now, one of the ways to try to figure out, just say you have these particular parcels that you have in mind across the town. You want to rank them on their importance. You can build an attribute assessment model, which takes into account a variety of attributes such as fragmentation or the unfragmented landscape. How big is that unfragmented block where that parcel is? How big is the parcel? What's the proximity to conservation lands? Potential rare or known rare species that may be out there. These things can be developed for your town, specifically for your town, based on your goals and objectives. Key part of any of your research, always clearly identify your goals and objectives, because it's going to decide in which direction your research design is going to be built around. But getting back to the parcel idea, so building this assessment model allows you to systematically score or rank each particular parcel, and that way it gives you an idea of which ones are more important. Combining the co-occurrence mapping, which looks at your whole town, throwing all these different layers together, identifying discrete little areas, is another way of identifying some parcels. If that's the approach you want, is identify maybe some other parcels that may be important as well. And then you can dump all those parcels into your assessment model, rank them, and it gives you an idea again of how important each one is. So where would you want to go spend that extra time and that money? And again, the ones that are going to rank out higher are you already know this fact, the ones that are in the large and fragmented blocks of land that have nice core habitat in the middle, and that are adjacent to conserved lands. That's an easy one. But then there's lots of other factors that you might want to throw into there as well. And it supplies you a systematic sampling throughout your town. And those are one things that...
Is that what you're doing for Nashville?
We're not doing that part. What we're doing is the co-occurrence mapping. So for Nashua, just give you a quick idea of what we're doing down there. They've identified a suite of natural resources that they wanted mapped. And the whole goal of the project is to identify conservation priorities and areas for fine-scale analyses. Now, this co-occurrence model that I'm talking about, this is what we're doing down there. They've identified all these different natural resources. We used approximately 25 different data, natural resource data, so prime agricultural soils, forest soils, wetlands. Down there they've identified primary wetlands, critical wetlands, and other wetlands for regulatory purposes, floodplains, just a whole slew of things that you've already started to map. So we identified those. I developed a simple survey for the commission for me to get an idea of where their priorities lie. What's a high priority and what's a low priority. Okay. Once we identified that, then we applied that to all of the natural resource data. basically give it a weight. You know, higher priority resources receive, say, 2 points. Lower receives 1 point. Okay, you throw that into a GIS, you know, that makes all your maps here, and it spits out this co-occurrence. The darker the color, the higher the priority for the site. Then we start to take a look at that in general across the whole town to see where these sites are congregated, where's the biggest concentration of these, and you look at that within the unfragmented landscape for one thing, and along stream corridors, major stream corridors, and the reason being is because just because you, like you were suggesting before, just because you have that development that's backing up there, there still could be serving as a wildlife corridor. There's still a lot of different functions that that stream could be serving as. So we want to take a look at those areas too. Then we identify these conservation focus areas. And then after we identified those, I developed an attribute assessment model to systematically sample 6 different ones, or to rank the 6 different areas that we identified. And from there, it gave a list of which ones were the highest priority and which ones were the lowest. Now, all 6 of those were the highest priority sites, but of those 6, which is the highest and which is the lower? And then you can start looking at smaller areas where that co-occurrence is happening, you know, that just may be little bits and pieces here, but it may be important later to start looking at these. But essentially, it gave them a great reference points to start putting their conservation dollars. Where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? Where are you going to protect the most resources? And now communities can go about this in all sorts of ways. Maybe one community, their most important thing is wildlife habitat, and that's what they want studied. You can do that, but you can add whatever data layers that are important for your town. Okay, this conservation planning is always specific to each community. Now, we also know that the plants and the animals, they don't care about boundaries. You know, the wildlife habitats, they don't care. But each town has their own sort of idea of where their priorities lie. Okay, you're in tune with your community. Now, this still gives you a great opportunity to work with the towns that are bordering you, especially on particular areas that may be a large unfragmented land that has a lot of conservation land. There might be something really important on the other side, so it gives you a chance to work with other communities as well. The other side, what we're identifying are areas for fine-scale analyses. This is a lot based on the Wildlife Action Plan because they've identified various levels of priorities for the prime habitat, wildlife habitat for the whole state, and then for the region. They break it down like that. So the fine-scale analysis really has to do with the biological structure of your community. You know, it's not so much where's the aquifer lie. You know, are you going to go out and really study exactly and delineate the whole lines of your aquifers and which ones are the high yield? You know, that gets to be really costly. Do you really want to delineate certain soil types and stuff? That gets very costly. The most economic way to go about it is to look at the wildlife and plant side of things. See, such thing as doing inventories for birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, plants, then look at it from a natural communities point of view. These are like the thing that I was talking about at the conference. So those were the 2 parts of the project, and we're slowly getting it finished right now. It's coming together. So that's basically what we're doing down there. The next step from that, what you can start to do is, now that we've identified these areas, you can start to do the parcel by parcel analysis, if that's what you're interested in, because then you can start to identify which of those parcels that you might want to go start landowner contact information. See what you can do there for conservation.
Based on what we have done or not done over the years, where we are, I guess, do you have some feel as to where we should be going next?
Well,
you know, based upon, you've dealt with a lot of towns, I know, as you mentioned, did Ackworth in particular at the meeting, and obviously you've taken a look at some of the things that we have in town.
Yeah.
It
Well,
might be a little bit different than Nashua because
Oh, yeah.
we're more concerned with protecting a major concern that we would have, the town would have. Conservation Commission also would be protecting the wells because that's where we derive our waters from the groundwater.
so water resources is a very important feature for your town. There you go. See, that's one of the first steps.
But should it be one of the priorities for conservation?
Whereas our MVD, which is the Merrimack Village District, that's the water
Okay.
arm of the town, that's been obviously their concentration. You
So
know,
maybe that shouldn't be out.
yeah, it might not be ours, because I guess they seem to feel they've done a job. Because they aren't looking at some parcels that kind of seem to us that, well, maybe it would be nice to make sure that that one doesn't get built on.
Sure.
But,
Well, one of the first things that I would suggest is sit down with your commission and really try to figure out where your priorities lie. Hammer those out. Hammer out your goals and objectives. Again, that is very crucial that your project stay in line with your goals and objectives. That's what's driving the research design. That's where you're getting your product from, basically. Okay.
basically, what do we feel are the elements of that, the rating system? What are those key elements that are important to us?
Exactly. So you want to sit down and really identify these things. You know, I noticed that a survey went out, I guess prior to the master plan, to get an idea from the community. It seems like natural resources was coming out a lot in there. That's what I was picking up on, reading through the plan. It could be as something as elaborate as sending out surveys again, defining particular features that the community can provide input as to what their priorities are. You know, that's one level that you can do it. Develop a formal survey, send these out. If you get 10% back, you're doing great. I don't know what your response rate was for the master plan, but
Less than one.
less than one.
That survey way back in
I know one of the things
the
Andy-
90s.
Andy brought up, that one of my goals this year would be to identify the wildlife in each of the areas that we have responsibility for. And that's a major task in itself. And I'm not too sure that, you know, I'd be qualified, or anybody that I know of would be qualified to really identify what is there, particularly when it comes to amphibians and vernal pools and so forth. Like, the big animals aren't too much of a problem.
That's the work that we do.
Yeah, that's, to me, I would be thinking that would be sort of my top priority.
Yeah, what's
For that.
what's the natural community, what's the habitat say should be in that area?
So,
Is it there?
so if that's a big priority for you, then we can start to look at the town and identify. We can start to use the wildlife action plan data, put in all their critical wildlife habitats. This is one of the things that one of the side for Nashua was ecological resources. One of it was critical wildlife habitats. Okay, these were identified because these are habitats that are important for a variety of species in general, but they've been identified basically because of the species of conservation concern in the state. Okay, these are certain places like your vernal pools, because you have the Blandings turtles that come there in the springtime to feed on the egg masses of the spotted salamanders and wood frogs and marbled salamanders and things like this. So vernal pools are one type. Particular wetlands, your marsh and shrub wetlands are considered a critical wildlife habitat because of the whole realm of species that are in there. So at first phase, coarse filter. Always start at the coarse filter level. Gather as much information that you can that's readily available, and then you start to tweak it. Do some really in-depth aerial photography interpretation. That can tell you a whole lot about an area without even getting on the ground looking. That information, really doing a good job at aerial photography interpretation.
One of the points that came out very clearly is Horse Hill. it was of interest. And we were looking at the course filter data, and basically what is now a fairly substantial beaver pond and associated wetlands area doesn't show up in the course filter.
It doesn't, yeah.
So that, because you know of the site, suddenly there's 18 acres of beaver pond and associated wetland areas that it's missing. So you've got to take
It's
that
kind of
course
it's kind of
filter
hard to
and bring
believe
it
that
back
18
here.
acres of wetland is missing, but
Well,
you know, this
it's-
was data that was created a while back.
Yeah,
You know,
it was-
that beaver moved in there after that.
No, Walter and
Or maybe.
Walt and I were out on the parcel that the town is hopefully going to purchase finally. 2 huge beaver ponds. Both dams blew out this spring. The lower one has never been rebuilt, so what we've got is a
Nice meadow.
just a huge meadow. Above it, the beaver have started rebuilding, but they've only built it up to about, I would guess, maybe half of what it used to be. So you've got a lot of areas that are suddenly uplands as opposed to wetlands. And you can then see where they've moved up to another wet area and turned it into a larger beaver pond. And that's all taken place within a year, 2 years at the most. The one I'm mentioning that doesn't show up in the course filter, we actually have aerial photographs of it over a 30-year span. 30 years
That's
ago.
great. Yeah, you could
30
track
years
the
ago,
changes.
You can see there's a little sign of moisture down there, and then in 10-year intervals, you watch this beaver pond grow to what it is now. And the large beaver pond has a series of 4 dams in it that raise the level probably 30, 35 feet. From you just stand here and look at the dams go up. And so, as you say, yeah, you get the course filter, but then you've got to say, okay, something's missing here.
You can really refine it using, and I keep stressing in-depth aerial photography interpretation. I do a lot on my projects. Mostly it's really cursory kind of stuff. It aids in every project because there are changes out there. One of the things that you can use is color infrared. It's great for showing water. It's great for showing wet soils. So it's a great method of, one, starting to map your wetlands in your town. That's a key part of doing a wetlands mapping for a town, or using these types of aerials. They're stereoscope. It's like you put 2 together like this and use a stereoscope, and kind of you get a headache after a while. but you really get a good idea of what's going on, say, just on a piece of property, just in one area. You know, you can start to identify, and then, you know, you can go back in time to see how places change, you know, if that's what you're interested in. But using those 2 will help you identify some of the areas that you'd want to go investigate. And then you could go out and do a rapid ecological assessment, which means, you know, it depends upon the size of the property. You might want to prioritize certain areas to hit. Wetlands are generally a good priority spot because they're easy to identify. Maybe some talus slopes that you have. These are very important areas. This is where you're going to pick up on some different natural communities along some of the major streams, maybe some floodplains along the Sauhegan that may be rare in the state. Depending upon your focus area, but then you could start to prioritize sites to visit. Then you can get out on the ground and start to map natural communities and critical wildlife habitats that are out there. Because one of the things that the plan doesn't identify are vernal pools. That's really hard to do unless you do the stereoscopic analysis, and then you can predict them, but you're still missing some. Because, you know, there's certain areas that you can predict them in the floodplains, along the saddles, along ridges of mountains. There's just various areas in the landscape looking at topography. There's certain types of national wetlands inventories. Is everybody familiar with that here? It was a program by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to map the wetlands of the United States. So there's certain types of those wetlands that are conducive for vernal pool activity, so you can start to tease these things out. And, you know, vernal pool is high priority to check on a piece of property. So you could do sort of this rapid ecological assessment. It's not necessarily a wildlife inventory, but anytime I do one, I put down everything I hear, whether it's just a regular old chickadee or did I find a wood frog egg mass, were you out the right time of the year it depends on that, you know. Sometimes it takes a couple of days to run across a piece of property, a week, 2 weeks, depending upon how deep you want to get into it, you know, and at what level are you interested in. But you could do some of these rapid assessments to start to identify what's the potential to occur out there. And if you do this in the right timing, maybe you go out in the springtime, which is the best time to pick up on most of your species. Your breeding birds are back, your amphibians are out mating. You know, by the end of April, your mole salamanders or the spotted salamanders and wood frogs, they're already laid their eggs in these areas. So as you're assessing it, oh, you already picked up on some species out there. So if you do the timing right, you can collect a lot more information, you know, as opposed to going out in the fall time. It's like, well, that looks like a potential vernal pool. It probably is, but there's no confirmed species in there because they've already left. So timing is really critical when trying to get out to some of these sites. You know,
It really is 12 months out of the year. It isn't just going out there 1 month and identifying it 12 months out of the year.
You're right. You're right. But trying to keep things within an economic sort of a budget, trying to keep things down in a budgetary realm to get someone like myself to go out there to do the type of work. I'm happy to go out and place 12 months a year. I mean, I love what I do, and I love getting out on the ground to do the fine scale stuff. You know, the computer stuff. It's great because I really understand conservation planning, and I like large scale conservation planning. But it doesn't substitute getting down on the ground. That's for sure.
Well, you know, Andy, you know, the work that was done back before you were a member of the commission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those prime wetland studies. Yeah.
There was quite a bit of time spent on that.
Yeah.
And we do have that somewhere
Mm-hmm.
within our files.
Oh,
It
yeah.
would seem to me as though that would be one of the places, if we hire Jeff to do, would be to assimilate all that information, present it back to the commission, so it gives us a better idea of where we should start.
Well, from what I hear him saying, that's part of the data that's there that you consider and when you try to put all of the information together.
But he would
That's
have to,
whatever
he'd
you
have
have.
to dig it out. He doesn't have that information.
Oh, I got it in a 3-ring binder.
You have it?
You don't have your 3-ring binder?
I've got the 3-ring binder. that
No, I mean,
did.
that we dug out when Karen was interested in looking at it a couple of years ago. We dug out a 3-ring binder. Of course, maybe I shouldn't say I have it. May not know where I have it.
But each of the groups have their own
Yeah,
binder,
yes.
Thick one.
and they all identify.
Well,
It is then.
what I understand in all of them is that if somebody's going to come in and do it, they're going to look at the data that you have available and then build on it to find out what else you need to add to it and how you massage it and
Of course,
whether
there's
it's a
many of
value.
those that are now disappeared
Well, yes,
because
yeah.
of the building.
Yeah, that there's,
But I
well,
mean-
like there's one on Bucher site where we attended the school today that used to be a wetland.
Oh, yeah.
It isn't anymore. I toured one 2 weeks ago of over 2 acres of wetlands that are potentially projected to be buried
Oh yeah.
Well, there's going to
in
be
construction.
when they remove that dam from the Souhegan River.
That'll
the
be
wetlands that are there are
affected.
going to disappear.
Well, they'll be affected. The study says they'll be
Certainly will be
affected. Won't disappear, but they'll be affected. But, yeah. Any other questions?
Well, these plans are really living documents.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
who would normally maintain it? No, that's the thing. You got to keep these things always up to date, and rather than going to a 3-ring binder in a file cabinet.
In a file
That's-
cabinet,
that's-
right, yes.
That's the problem. You know, you can
That's-
start something that's great, but what happens in a few years?
That's exactly it, you know.
Well, there's a couple levels that you work on. Either commission maintains it and keeps it up to date and adds on to it, or you hire someone to do that. The commission can assign a committee, you know, to help try to maintain this over time. And what does it mean? Because it can get complicated, you know, as you keep doing research. How do you really maintain it in a useful fashion? And you want to try to keep everything localized on sites, You know, you want to look at it from a small scale, you want to look at it from a big scale. You know, it can get complicated, and I think one of the reasons of really doing an in-depth review of your existing information could help you identify your data management over time, okay, on your terms of how you'd like to see it handled. What are some other options? You know, what would that entail? You know, one of the things, everything is computerized these days. Everything's in a digital database, in a geographic information system, or a GIS, you know. Well, yeah, not quite everything. That's
Tax map, not yet.
So, you know, that's a great way of storing your data, and you can develop a database for that information as you collect it over time to be stored in there. And once it's set up, you have it set up, then it's just data entry at that point, you know, basically, and, you know, manage it. It may need to adjust over time because, as I said, you got to keep an adaptive management planning mind about these things, especially when it comes to more your management planning on the ground. But sometimes you may need to adjust some things, especially if maintaining this information over a long period of time, talking about decades, you know, new technology comes up, you know, there's different ways, there's better ways of doing stuff, but, you know, there's different options there, but that's a big concern, you know, once you start getting all this information, and that's one of the things that you don't want to lose, is all this information that you've gathered, you paid someone to compile, and you know, 5 years down the line, you don't want that to just sort of fall on the wayside. You want to be able to maintain that over time. Otherwise, you know, it's kind of like wasting money.
Yeah.
You know.
What I see in our town, as I say, build-out is tentatively about 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
The sections of town that haven't been built are the most difficult ones to build in. Slopes, wetlands, and all kinds of related areas, the difficult ones. And we've kind of built this town up very rapidly in the last 30 years. I guess almost ignoring natural resources. There've been some attention to it, but not on any kind of planning. Can we do something? Should we do something that says, where do we go in this final build out? And what do we keep an eye on? But you raise a very good point, because, I mean, as Eber mentions with the prime wetland study that was probably about 14 years ago, there's data that was presented, and there it is. And I'll have to admit, I've been here 10 years. We've done some management plans for parcels, and there's only so much that we can do, or any one of us is willing to do, you know. As you could see today, everybody's out there, help me with this trail or that trail or the other trail. You know, there's an awful lot of things you want to get done, but you can only do so many.
But it would seem to me, if we can afford to hire somebody to take and keep it up, or to do it and keep it up, I think probably that would be a good step for us. Because you're not always going to be in the commission, I'm not always going to be in the commission.
Yeah.
New members coming on, this information would be brought forth for them, they'd have it.
I think it'd be
Maintaining an essential
getting
database.
some of this information
It's
together
effective in the long
and
run.
making it available, and getting the planning board on board with what it means, and having them aware of it, and using it as they do their reviews, town council, obviously. Some of the ulterior motive is to justify expanding some of the conservation and protected parcels in town. You know, it's nice for me to stand up and say that, hey, this is great wildlife habitat, but I'm not, I don't have the qualifications or the degrees or pedigree to go and do it, but, you know, are we thinking the right way? Which is why I asked Jeff to kind of come here and give you folks some of what I heard from him. You know, he's preaching a little bit to the choir when he preaches at me, obviously.
And the other thing is, what do we do with the information?
Well,
What are we going to do with it?
well, that's it. What I say.
It drives land management, whether it's on a parcel basis or whether it's on a town-wide basis. It gives you an idea of where you should be putting your conservation dollars, essentially.
But this is already land we have. So you've already put the dollars in it.
Well,
So
not necessarily, no, this is looking at the whole town.
Yeah,
Oh,
this
this would be not
this would
just-
help to identify other areas that are not town-owned.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
the
The way
the other
I see
open
it is-
space that's
A
out
lot
there.
of private land that was identified.
Sure,
Yeah.
I see.
This-
Oh, okay.
to me,
I thought
I
it was
see it
basically just
as-
our own parcels. And
It's
things.
like taking
No,
a section of the master plan, which is a very broad brush that says, okay, this looks important to us.
Okay,
Now, why is it important to
Then
us?
you
And
have the
which ones
information.
specifically are more important? Maybe what we're seeing out here, maybe there's something down here that we totally overlooked. Maybe it isn't
Mm-hmm.
300 contiguous acres, maybe it's only 20 or 30 or 40, that when we really get down an analysis of it, wow, that's an important little piece.
I see, okay.
You know, it's like the parcel that, as we expanded Greater Woods Town Forest, I never realized there was a blue heron rookery up in that area. You know, obviously the neighbors did, but if we'd realized that some time ago,
Yeah.
we probably would have, you know, thought a little bit about it.
Yeah,
But 30 years ago, I wouldn't have thought about it, you know.
That's
So
why.
it's raising the awareness level of hopefully everybody in town, but in particular those who are making some decisions, as I say, planning board, that kind of thing, I think. You know, trying to,
Subdivision regulations could play a vital role. If
Yeah.
you wanted to add to that, you know, without having
Provides a
to-
better quality of living.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree
we
with
sit
you.
here and we see a subdivision come in and we say, hey, there's a great wetlands over there, save it for us. You know,
Yeah.
thank heavens, you know, most cases it happens, but try to explain why that's important. It would be, or to say, well, you shouldn't probably build that house lot in there because, hey, there's some key woodcock habitat and you're wiping it all out and the species is gonna disappear from there and it's one of the critical ones that we should be watching in town in this part of the state and kind of putting some more information in front of people.
One of the things that we have done, though, in the past is try to provide, when the developer comes in, is try to provide a wildlife corridor around the perimeter of the place.
Yeah, but we've only been doing that for what, 5 years maybe?
Yeah.
In some cases it works and some doesn't.
yeah, but without really valid information to back it up. We just
Yeah,
say well, let's put
we
something
know the
there.
area,
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, like Wasserman Heights, we got a 100-foot wildlife corridor around the perimeter. It goes from Wasserman Park down to Horse Hill Nature Preserve. So, I mean, there's that one spot that.
yeah, but how did you choose that as a,
Because he knew the area and he knew that
okay,
that
you
was
knew
a
it, there's-
traffic
somebody
pattern.
had to
Yeah.
know it, right.
On-the-ground views.
You can't just establish it and say,
No,
oh, they're
no.
gonna go this way, so let's give them a corridor and then they'll go.
Well, it's a little bit like
If there's
as
some
I
data,
said-
we could do it.
yeah, as I said to you
Yeah.
today, that was the first time today you happened to see the Campo parcel, right?
Yeah,
Okay, and he's voted all this money for us to buy it and supported my evaluation of it. So it's a little bit of Eber talked about wildlife habitat in his area. I talk about wildlife habitat in that area. So it's kind of the on-site observation of pure amateurs.
Well, that's one of the things that I offer for towns, as well as subdivision or development, review development plans or proposed subdivisions and stuff like that, to help a town understand maybe what's on the property, what are the important features of the property, you know, a non-biased view. Just go out there. That's one of the rapid ecological assessments I was talking about. Walking the land depends upon how big it is. I walk the land, provide recommendations and in my findings of the project. Then it's up to the town to take it or leave it. You know, but I've been doing that down in New Ipswich, working with their town. They're doing that, and that's something that I'd like to offer up more because it seems like more and more towns are more open to having this done. It's not a full-on scientific study. It's a quick assessment of what's happening on the property, and you're gathering whatever information you can. But it's useful in your planning. You know, it's very useful.
I think it too, what pops to mind is on Horse Hill, once again, and what your subcommittee is saying, they're doing the monthly walks. They're looking for somebody to participate in it to help educate everyone. What are we walking through? Well, this is a wetlands, or these are south-facing rocky ledges, and that's habitat for this, this, and this, and kind of pointing out those kinds of things, educating the people who are using it. And I think most of them would like that kind of information, who are going to go on those walks. At the same time, you're providing us with a base of information too. But how do you work your prices, your fee?
Oh, I sit down and we can meet and talk about it. Talk about what your project is, what are you interested in doing, and I work up a price for you. I base it on an hourly rate, but I work up a price, and it's usually it's on a package. We'll put it that way. I work on a package basis, so it depends upon how much work is involved. All sorts of, I guess, variables such as that.
Well, it sounds like we need to do some balls in our park, yeah, for.
I work on
doing more
a sliding
talking.
scale. Conservation commissions are at the lower end. That's how I do it. That's just my personal business setup. I choose to do that because there's a lot of conservation commissions that are out there that don't have a whole lot of money to work with, but there's no reason why they shouldn't get some professional help in the areas that they want it and desire it. So,
Yeah, generally when you're not getting current use change tax funds, that means that that your opportunities for doing something are the best, but you don't have the funds. But and when the funds come in, then development's going like crazy. Like it's happened around here. So.
Andy, I just wonder, just to give us an idea of what the cost would be, if Jeff come in, when I went through what was done here 14 years ago, with that information that we should have on file here somewhere, that you might have the three.
Somewhere.
If he was to take a look at that and come out with what his thoughts would be as to the areas that we should be concentrating on. I mean, there should be 45 of them in there. I think 20 of them we went out and walked and made an analysis of and rated. That's there. That information is already there. Some of those places have gone, have been built, but there would sort of be a starting point for us as to, I don't know how much time it would take to do that, to give us an idea of what it would cost, but I'm sure you could probably sit down with Scott and go over that.
once you start to see sort of the amount of information, and again, I would want to sit down with you so we define your goals and objectives, again, very clearly, and the compilation of your existing information would be the next logical step to proceed from there. Because then is it going to be driven by wildlife habitat, which is something that either you're very interested in, you know, is that the whole idea behind it, or are we going to do some aerophotography interpretation in conjunction with the critical wildlife habitat data that's on there, to hone down some sites that we're going to go to, and it's based on this wetland information that we're finding there. Working in conjunction with you guys know that some of these wetlands aren't there, X amount. No need to look at them if the wetland doesn't exist. Now if it was partially impacted, you still would want to look at it, but you know, as you said, one particular area just doesn't even exist any longer, I think. But so you have local knowledge that can help drive this as well. So we'd want to sit down and work in conjunction, and to try to make this as efficient as possible.
No, I kind of see that kind of data and all the other data we have falling into when, after you look at your goals and objectives, after you determine what's important to you, then you start getting into the information and saying, okay, this information, as I remember reading through it, is basically keyed in on wetlands. It doesn't really talk about the adjoining habitats and
Not
whatnot.
much, no.
So that I wonder what its value as a wetland is greater than an overall habitat issue.
Well, see,
You know,
that's
so
a good
that
point. You
you're
really
kind
want to
of-
look at it from a bigger
You got to
picture.
come from the coarser one, and this seems to me that this is down towards the more finer layer of saying, okay, now that kind of is this level. Do we go out and look at it and because it seems that maybe we should, so.
Yeah.
But I think that we have to sit down and kind of talk things over ourselves, bring our other two members up to date, and kind of toss some things around as, I kind of think about what do you think are important goals, objectives, what's important to you? I mean, some of them have come up in here. If we're gonna go and evaluate things, we've gotta have scale. Doing evaluation, which is kind of what I've mentioned a month or so ago on parcels of interest. You know, it's great that we got 30 of them in a row, and 30 on our list, but how are we gonna put one above the other? And
And
that's
there,
the
see,
same
that,
kind of
that's a
thing.
different kind of goal and objective right
Yeah.
there, you know, that we could do. We'd set up an assessment model, you look at each of those parcels and boom, they come out as a ranking. Then you can start to identify the parcels that you would want to start pursuing with landowner contact
Yeah,
information.
it might be that
You know?
you start with what we have, and then you kind of, how do you expand those? And then almost, okay, what other areas in town should we look at with the same fine look that we just did up here? So I think we've got to kind of toss it around and,
Yeah,
Certainly uplands are maybe not quite as important as wetlands, but they are.
what is?
Uplands.
Well, they all work together.
It's like you say, Andy, you know, well, that study was, like, was mostly for wetlands.
Yeah, it was prime wetlands.
Yeah, it didn't take into consideration the importance of the uplands for the wildlife. And where do we want to place our emphasis? Which is the most important? Is it the uplands? Is it the wetlands? Or is it to try to look at it for purchase, to keep it as open space so it's not developed?
Well, I look at it, Eber, as I say, as habitat. That's uplands, that's wetlands combined, or maybe either with the exception of the other. You know, what's an important habitat for a species? Do we say that, okay, these critical ones that have been identified here, I think woodcock and ruffed grouse actually are some of the birds that are, their habitat's kind of endangered in this part of the state. Is that habitat, which includes both wetlands and some uplands, is that something that's important to us? And then the question is, how important is it to us? How much of it do we have? How much of it can we find? And what should we do, kind of is the way I walk through it.
one of the things that I think would be important for your Conservation Commission to do was to sit around and as you're talking about these things right now, you're already putting them out on the table. What is important to you?
Yeah.
What are your priorities? And you don't have to hash them all out. Throw everything out on the table. Throw it all out there and then start discussing it. Why is it important? And then I'd be happy to come over. We could have a workshop, a powwow per se, and to really hone down what is important for your town. And then that will help you drive your conservation planning. That is a huge crux of it. That'll help you identify your objectives, your goals and objectives. Those are just, I can't stress those enough, knowing where your priorities lie. And I mean, when I say that, I mean the natural resources, just the general natural resources again. Wildlife habitats or wildlife biological diversity, water supply source, really hashing things out and getting a good understanding of that. That's where I would start. You have a lot of good information that's out there on multiple scales, as I said. You have some coarse filter stuff, the NRI data that's out there. You have this wetlands data from 14 years ago, but it's still data. Okay, just because it's 14 years ago doesn't mean it's not good. Now it does just look at wetlands, but it does identify some features on your landscape that could be important. So then you got to hash all this stuff together, put it in the pot, and make some sense out of it. And that is the starting point that I would recommend. Commission, talk about it. See where your priorities lie. We can develop a workshop, sit down and really talk about this, hone out your goals, objectives, hone out your certain priorities, and from there we can talk about all different types of possibilities and what really makes sense on which way to pursue, especially once you start to identify and compile and synthesize all that information that you have out there.
I think what we all need to do if we come up with a wildlife habitat would have to be in 4 seasons.
Oh, I agree. When I work on a project, it's year round, not necessarily the coarse filter analysis thing that I'm talking about, but when I'm working on the ground, it's year round because because it's the most effective way of gathering your species information, because there are certain species that are going to be most active during certain times of the year. That is very important. When I do develop land management planning on, say, a Conservation Commission purchased a piece of property and they want to know how they should manage it based on this particular goal or goals and objectives. I go out, I do my study, and it spans over the year. I do my mammal tracking during the winter time, although I'm collecting incidental observations constantly, scent posts, scat, various other signs that are out there.
Deer
Okay.
rubs,
Deer,
the beaver,
deer rubs,
nibbling.
deer yards, maybe.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, springtime, amphibians. That's when they're most active. They're most easily detected during that time. Breeding birds are back. You know, end of April, starting into May and June, July. You can hear them easily. You can see them. Well, you mostly hear them, especially the little warblers and stuff. You know, snakes and turtles. We're doing that in spring and into summer. So the seasonality is a big thing, and it makes for the most efficient data collection. You know, like I said, you can just go wander around on a property, collect some good information, but if you're out there at various times of the year, collecting migratory information. What about some of the larger wetlands that are around here that may be serving as a important migratory stopover area for some of your our migrant waterfowl? You know, these are important sites. You can't collect that information in the summertime. You know, they're not moving through spring and fall.
Can't evaluate what happens in our wood duck boxes until wintertime when they're not inhabited. I guess what is kind of driven my having Jeff here, and I think we've got to wrap this up and
Sure,
and get on
sure,
going,
I understand.
With Horse Hill, that's probably the most studied parcel we have. But I think that a lot of what we learned from the forest and the ecological study that was done is important data that help manage that and locate trails and do some other things. And even at what that was, it was a little bit on the coarse filter side. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, Dan did a very extensive one on the forestry part. The ecological part was a little less of quick. These are coarse filter habitats, and some of them don't show up. But I go again, and then I go over to Greater Woods Town Forest, where here we now got 380 acres. I know in my heart that, in my mind, that's important. I know what some of the critters are out there because I see the habitat, and I figure that they are there. I've been out there on multiple seasons and seen some of them, or the trail or the track of them. But there's an awful lot of birds. I know nothing about birds. Well, raptors, yes, but the songbirds and such. But as I was saying to Walt today, I'm looking at the school, and we're looking at this big beaver pond turned to meadow that 2 years ago was a beaver pond behind the school. You know, there's a changing habitat there.
That's right.
You know,
That's true.
From everything I've studied, it's important that we're getting that. And I suggested to the school because they're just enthused as a training area right out their back door.
Oh,
Literally,
that's great.
They're 40 feet away from it. That, you know, even a photo history of that, starting now, you know.
See how it
See
succeeds over
what-
time.
How it evolves over time. How do we, as a Conservation Commission, I'm going to stand up there in front of the town council in a couple nights and say, give us the responsibility to manage it. At times, I'm frustrated. We have the responsibility to manage 1,500, 1,700 acres in town. How much of it are we really managing? Can we do a better job? Maybe it's above and beyond us. I know I say it because I own a 100-acre parcel and I try to manage it. For wildlife habitat, forestry, and all of these other things. This is a challenge. That's only 100 acres. But I think it's gotta be done in my mind, so I think this is probably the best tool to do it. I'd like us to look at it, maybe, maybe rather than taking on the whole town at once, maybe we take on Greater Woods Town Forest and say, okay, let's make this our model for the town and kind of then spread out from it. Those are some of the thoughts that are popping up as we talk tonight.
Andy, just so we know how this is going to be funded, is it going to be funded with the funds we already have, or is it coming out of current use funds, or is it coming out of the general fund?
I would not ask for taxpayer dollars for it, no. We have two conservation funds with sufficient dollars in it, either one.
So we're authorized to do this out of those?
Well, that's a decision we'd have to make, but that's where I suggest the dollars come from.
Okay, just so long as we know.
Yeah, no, I would not put this on this, well, if we're gonna put it, if you were thinking of even putting it on the budget, it is gonna happen for a year and a half, 2 years. The 2007, 2008 budget's already in for decision purposes and discussion. That's one of my notes here, is that it had to go in 2 weeks ago, so it went in. Walter already submitted it. But no, we have conservation funds, that's what these dollars are for.
Use our own funds, I would
Yeah,
think.
That's what
Yeah.
I was wondering
Yeah,
if we
no.
use our own funds or where
I
is it
couldn't stand
coming
up and ask for more tax dollars, not in this day and age. I don't want to, I'm a taxpayer. And we all know what that means. We just got our tax bills like everybody else. So I think what we'll do at this point is, I'll throw it on a January agenda for us to bring.
Discussion, I didn't talk about it.
Yep. Maybe I suggest, like Jeff was saying, each of you write down what you think, what's important to you. What would, in this kind of project, what are your individual goals, and what do we, objectives of this? What do we want to do? And I guess the big question is, can we do it? I'll be quite honest with you, we can hire somebody to do it, but I think you raised a very good question. When we pay the final bill and we get a piece of paper on it, what happens then? But I guess I'm a little selfish too, because my stated goal from the year was to take Greater Woods Town Forest and bring it to the next level, and the intent is to go in and study it in depth. I already have a couple volunteers for citizens to work on an advisory group with us on that. We've got middle school with teachers, and they're very enthused as a classroom, plus a lot of use on it. The opportunity's there. So.
Well, I think that's a good idea. We just write down what we.
Write her down.
And in our next meeting, we can come up with it, put them in a pile, and then if we want to meet with Jeff again for a powwow.
Well, yeah.
Have him come down
Big
and.
brainstorming session, it helps to
Yeah.
really flesh things out.
I think you bring yours in, and then, we'll compile them back up, we'll explain them to each other, and then you mull them over, and then you get brainstorming together and see what happens.
Certainly. Wintertime is really good time to get your planning together. Like I said, again, especially if you want to get out and do on-the-ground research. And it seems like you folks are on different levels of where you would like to. You want to do some field work, and you want to do more looking at the town to look at where some hot spots are as well. And you can do these all in conjunction. But wintertime is really good planning, because when springtime comes around, that's when you want to be out on the ground. You don't want to be planning at that point. It makes it easier and cost effective for yourselves.
Yep.
So I certainly look forward to meeting with your Conservation Commission again. Sounds like you have a lot of great ideas, a lot of really good information, and you have the wherewithal to work with it, and the interest, and the knowledge too. So, thank you for having me this evening.
Well, thank you for making the trip, and
Oh, certainly.
our half hour turned into a little bit more. And that was my
Sorry.
projection, not yours, I know. Well, no, I think I did up it to an hour, but And you say some of this is,
I just put together some information.
what I can do is I can copy what you did also and
Okay.
hand it out at the NHACC meeting, which gives you a little idea what he was talking about there too, which should give you some thoughts on.
Yeah, it's just another realm of conservation planning. You know, there's a lot of different ways of going about it, depending upon what's important for your town. That's the main idea. Well, have a very nice evening.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
I look
you,
forward to
Jeff.
talking to you soon.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Okay.
Good night. Nice to meet you.
Scott, why don't you take this one? You can make a copy of that, or Jeff, do you have that? Did you email me your presentation?
Okay.
Yeah, then we can do an email distribution because it looks pretty in color.
Yeah, I can email that to you. What I'll have to do is, it may take me about a week,
Okay,
something like that.
that's fine.
I'll get to it, but I'm gonna have to scan it in and then send it to you.
Oh,
But
it's
I-
not a PowerPoint, huh?
Well, it is a PowerPoint. I guess there's
But-
a way to extract it like that and email it easily.
Yeah.
But I'll send it to you.
Okay,
No problem.
that's good.
That way you can,
Hey, we're all
distribute it.
going to relax during the holiday season anyhow.
It is holiday season, isn't it? Is winter here yet? I'm ready to see some snow. I'm ready to go tracking.
Oh, I know it.
Have a nice evening.
Right.
Thank
see
you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Hayner and Swanson representing DRS Codem Systems. You're on. Thank you very much for being patient tonight. We had not anticipated having your proposal on our agenda, and it scheduled Jeff in, and he traveled quite a ways to get here, so.
I appreciate you fitting us in tonight. Would it be best if I just set up the easel right here and sit right here? or-
Yeah, that's fine. Yep, then we've got you on voice. We have, I don't know, if we had any cameras move? No, so we must be just being recorded tonight, as opposed to photographed, up close and personal. On this wildlife action plan, I'm gonna follow up on this CD and see, getting some more information out of it and how to make it work.
I could, you keep it.
Okay, because I've got it on my hard drive anyhow.
You have to
But yeah, I was hoping that Scott could get me some.
recording. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Earl Blatchford with Hayner Swanson. We're located at 3 Congress Street in Nashua, and as Andy said, I'm here on behalf of DRS Codem, and they're proposing a small building addition at the existing facility at 21 Continental Boulevard. The parcel is approximately 9.6 acres. It's zoned I-1 industrial. The lot is also identified as Lot 99, Map 3C. There aren't any wetlands involved with this application, but the parcel is in the Aquifer Conservation and the Wellhead Protection Districts, which is why we're here tonight. The existing building, which is in the lighter color, is approximately 102,000 square feet. It's an older industrial building. It is, and there is parking on 3 sides of it for approximately 465 parking spaces. The facility is currently fairly underutilized, has been for a while. It houses 2 companies. This portion of the building, at the south end of the building, is where Filtronics currently occupies. The rest of the building is, well, at least partially occupied by DRS Codem. They don't fully occupy the building. They're currently planning some building renovations in this second-story portion of the building and hoping to better utilize the facility over time.
What is DRS Codem? Manufacturing of some sort? I'm not familiar with what they do.
They
at this
manufacture
site.
communications facilities, I think primarily for military applications. I can't give you a detailed, unfortunately, Lou Gargas from DRS Codem was going to attend tonight, but he was called away on business. last minute. So, but they, my general understanding is they make communications and surveillance equipment, which I think it's primarily for military applications.
So manufacturing is done there? Is this their only facility, or do they have other facilities?
Their main facility, at least in this area, I mean, it's a large company, but this division, their main office is over on Executive Park Drive, over near where the new theater. Just
Okay.
before, on the right, as you're approaching the new theater, the Cinemagic.
Okay.
Not so new anymore, I guess it's been there for 2 or 3 years now.
Okay, yeah.
As far as the butters go, basically on the east and the north side are industrial users, and then around the back, which is the east and the southerly end, are the residences along Camp Sargent Road. Everything that we're proposing tonight is on the opposite side of the building, so it's well buffered from the residential users. Basically, what DRS Codem wants to do is really the only main entrance to the building, if you're familiar with it, is at the south end. It's really the only entrance to the building you can point at and say, you know, that's a main entrance. And it only serves the Filtronics end of the building. They do have some really, Codem's main entrance is right here, and it's kind of removed from the parking areas, and it's not very easily identified. There's another entrance in here in this alcove, but again, it's not very identifiable. So what they are proposing to do is to, let me flip to the larger scale plan. Sort of basically, this area that's colored up in the front is the limit of the proposed development area. So I'll blow that up a little bit. Again, here's the entire front of the existing building. Right in here in this alcove, they're proposing to put in an atrium entrance addition. It's 2,700 square feet. And in conjunction with that, they are proposing to, there are 4 existing curb cuts on Continental Boulevard right now, full access. They are proposing to eliminate this driveway right here and basically just tear the pavement out and loam and seed it. And in place of that, they're proposing to put a entrance-only driveway here, which cuts through and connects to the southernmost existing driveway. And that's basically to put 7 visitor parking spaces right near this new entrance. That's one problem. The center part of the building is, it's the furthest away from either one of the parking areas. So they wanted to put a minimal amount of parking spaces right adjacent to that. And we're proposing to modify the walk system a little bit to basically give better circulation around the front of the building and from the new parking spaces to the entrance. We're proposing to facilitate drainage from this new driveway parking area as well as the building addition and the walks in a small detention area right out here in front. It's just a lawn area right now. We're proposing a shallow, kind of a minimal basin. And we have an overflow structure here which then connects out to the street system. So we wanted to obviously mitigate the additional impervious area, which is a total of about 8,000 square feet. It's about 5,000 square feet of pavement between the drive and the parking and the walks, coupled with the removal of this pavement, and then 2,700 square feet for the building itself.
So that was 5,000 net gain?
No, about 8,000 net increase.
Okay, yeah, you said 2,700 or so for the atrium.
Building and 5,000 or
there,
a little
and
bit
what
more.
are you eliminating?
Well, that includes basically adding this new pavement in the building, subtracting this. It's about 8,000 square
So
feet
8
of increased.
Is the net gain.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, a little less than 1/5 of an acre. So it's a small, kind of a residential scale increase. But still, we didn't want to have any off-site impacts even for that small increase. So that's what we've proposed. We're showing some erosion control measures, silt fence basically along the frontage to protect the road from any siltation. We're calling for silk sacks or similar products over the existing catch basins to keep silt from getting into the street system, and we're calling for a temporary stone check dam around the outlet structure until that basin has a good stand of grass established.
Now, how is in the parking area, how are you going to collect the stormwater and get it over to your basin?
Well, we've basically called for sheet runoff to here with a curb break and a small bituminous apron there to get the runoff off from the driveway. The reason we've done that is one, the street system is pretty shallow, and two, and I think a more critical reason, is there are several sewer, water, underground electric, roof drain services that are cutting through this whole area, and we're finding it next to impossible to try to figure out a way to get a pipe through there. So we're basically trying to sheet flow off the pavement and swale it down into this area.
Okay, now you've got it into that area, now where is it going?
Okay, then it'll perform the detention function. We have an outlet structure right here, which is basically a manhole structure with a catch basin grate on top, and it has a small diameter hole to meter out the water. The catch basin on top basically is an overflow structure if it ever.
So is that the same level as the bottom of your detention area, or is that raised up so that the water?
The small outlet is about 6 inches above, so we have a small sediment area that will accumulate sediment over time and periodically need to be cleaned out. So I think between sheet flowing through this grass area and then basically sediment will settle out just from being detained in the basin itself.
And then where does it flow from there once it gets
And then
into
from
that?
there it flows out into the street system. And we've done the analysis so that, basically this whole front area sheet flows in the direction of the street now and gets into the street system. So we've done a pre-development versus post-development analysis and concluded that we're not increasing the peak rate of runoff to the street system. So
So it just goes in the sewer, is that what you're saying?
goes into the storm system,
The
yeah.
storm system?
Yeah.
Now, of the water flowing into that basin, detention basin, how much of it do you feel is going to be absorbed back down into the ground, and how much of it is going to flow out into the
Well, we didn't
system?
we didn't include an infiltration component in our calculation, and that's mainly to just be conservative. The soils out here are generally classified as Windsor, which are excessively well drained. So the fact of the matter is, you're going to have quite a bit of infiltration out here. But to be conservative as far as analyzing what offsite impacts are, we leave that component out of our analysis. But this is a soil that typically has a perk rate of less than, faster than an inch per minute. So
Okay, how do you, that is going to be a grassy swale is what the intent is?
yes.
Now, how are you going to clean any materials that are gathered in the bottom? How are you going to clean them out of there?
Basically, typically in this area, it would be with a jet vac truck. They can just go in and just basically vacuum out. This is a very small basin. You really can do it by hand.
Why wouldn't you put or maybe I should say, did you consider, rather than making it grassy, making it more towards sandy surface in the base there, so that as it filters through, if it starts to build up and not infiltrate as well, it's just quick, easy, remove the top 2 inches of sand, put in 2 more inches of sand, and you're in business?
Well, I think one, it is in the landscaped area out front. I don't know if that would be become sort of a nuisance area. We didn't really want to go with a stone base. We basically wanted to.
I didn't want to say stone base. I said very carefully sand, because having been to the stormwater center at UNH, getting dangerous nowadays, because you look at the various systems which they're using, and they find that the one that very similar to this kind of setup, is that if you're putting sand in there, one, it's very easy to maintain. The maintenance is easy. The sand filter part of it, as soon as it begins to appear clogged, quick, easy, remove the top 2 inches of sand, put more sand back in, you're done. Whereas if it's grass, it often isn't maintained. The grass continues to kind of grow up and maintenance becomes more of an issue.
Yeah, I think we tried to design this. I mean, it's only about 2 feet deep. We put in 4-to-1 side slopes, so it's basically what I envision for it, and I think what they intend to do is basically they'll mow it. It's just an extension of the lawn area, but it's you know, it has enough depth and enough size to offset the increase in runoff. So it's basically trying to utilize a lawn area, keep it primarily as a lawn area and secondarily as a detention basin. I'm not sure. I don't know. We've never designed a basin that way, and I suspect it would be somewhat problematic during dry periods, that it's going to turn into a bit of a dust bowl, I would think.
Function well up there.
I mean, that's in a controlled atmosphere that's probably closely maintained, but
Oh, no, they don't maintain them. They're maintained in what they call the New Hampshire method,
yeah.
which means you ignore it.
Which I think over time you're gonna, I mean, I
But
just
they
know, I
found
just
that
know from observation,
Wait.
areas that aren't,
Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna tend to establish some grass in some form, or weeds. I mean, it maybe can't.
Obviously, I'd rather see it infiltrate back into the soil on site rather than flow off into Continental Boulevard, because
Well, I think this
we don't know where some of that system from Continental Boulevard goes, and other pieces of it that we do know where it goes, which is to Natticook Brook.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll find even with a lawn on this type of soil, it's going to have a high rate of absorption. It's a droughty soil. The lawn out there, from what I've seen, is not a real thick, hardy lawn. You can tell it's in a droughty soil.
Yeah, and I also look at, infiltrate it, but it's also got to treat it. We've got to remove some of those hydrocarbons that are going to end up from that parking lot, and I'm going to assume that probably they're going to want to spread salt on that parking lot too.
Well, we've included notes on the plan that
No salt? No ice melting compounds?
got no salt, no chemical deicers to be used, which is note 10 on our sheet 1 of our plan. And then along the same lines, our note 13, we've called for judicial use of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers to be applied by licensed contractor.
Is that a Cape Cod berm around the parking area
Yes, it is.
so that the direction of the flow is, I guess, to the east?
Yes, the majority. We have a high point right here. There's just a little bit of from right here, this part of the driveway, sheet flows internally into the driveway, and gets into the existing system over there. The rest of it, all sheet flows in this direction, right to this low point, as well as a small portion of the road, which currently comes to this curve line, and then off the pavement and down to the detention basin.
What's the distance from that paved area down toward the center of your detention
Right in
pond
here,
from there?
This is 20 scale plan, so, maybe 70 feet,
Okay.
so.
Just my education, sheet flow is the water that doesn't permeate through the soil, and it,
Basically running over the surface, basically just sheeting across the pavement, and then it will
Yeah.
become channelized. Once it gets to this point, then it will become a little more channelized, although this is a very shallow.
but also in the grass, you said, the sheet flow.
It'll sheet
Well-
flow. It'll start to become a little bit channelized as it all gets to this point. It may form a very
Now,
small.
you said that area is, the stuff does drain very well, the soils. Or
No,
did you say
it
wasn't?
drains excessively well. It's very well
Okay,
drained.
well, then the math doesn't seem to line up, because you're saying the same amount of flow will go into the street. But if you're covering up an area that drains very well, how can you have the same amount flow going into the street?
Well, we've taken into account in the pre-development, we've taken into account the soil type, the soil class, and we analyze what will sheet flow using prescribed methodology of what will sheet flow from the front of the property to the curb line of the street and then get into the street system for the existing condition. And then we take into account the additional pavement and our detention basin, which basically has got a small outlet, holds the water back, and lets it out at a controlled rate, which is equal to or less than the peak rate of runoff that
Okay,
exists today.
you decrease the peak rate, but you've probably increased the rate because you have less now going under the pavement, through the pavement that you're adding.
Well, we've
But
increased.
you just decreased it.
We've increased the rate to the detention basin, but then from there to the street.
That's what I'm saying, you've decreased the rate, but you've increased the net amount. You have to increase the net amount because you're closing off a lot.
we're
You're covering an
increasing-
awful lot of area
We're increasing
that
the
would
rate of-
normally
We're
be.
increasing the rate of runoff right here, but we're compensating for it right here. And this is not our methodology, it's the
Right.
accepted methodology that the town accepts and is generally accepted, so. That's the function of a detention basin, is to hold back water and meter it out to
Oh.
the downstream
No,
system.
I understand all that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is the net amount of water, it may be at a slower rate, but the net amount of water is higher, has to be higher. Because you've cut off area that was already, would be absorbing water.
Yes, the total is, but it over time.
Over longer.
It's held
right.
back and it's metered out over periods,
Understand,
so that the
okay.
downstream impacts as far as peak rates
Okay, fine.
is equal to or less than.
If you have a storm, what would be the absorption rate of the water in the detention pond? Is it gonna be there for a day, or is it gonna be there for a week, or is it always gonna have water in the bottom of it?
No, it's designed to be dry. I mean, it will, during a peak storm, it'll have water in it for something less than 24 hours. And again, it's a shallow basin. It might have a foot of water in there for, better part of a day. But then it'll drain dry.
So it'll be dry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and especially with that soil out there, even that 6 inches at the bottom will just drain right out. It'll dry up pretty quickly.
The atrium addition, the roofed in, where's that draining to?
Basically, it'll have down, it's a gabled roof, the main building is a flat roof.
Yeah.
This is a gabled roof arrangement. It'll have downspouts that come to the
So
front,
it's
and that's been
feeding to
taken
the
into
front.
account. Yeah,
Okay.
so it'll
Yep.
have downspouts to the landscaped areas, which again drains in the general direction. What doesn't percolate into the ground will make its way to the basin. So that's been taken into account.
Now, you have not been before the planning board with this yet?
I just found out today we're scheduled to go next week.
Okay, because Walter wanted them on our schedule before that, because of time. I guess you're asking for both acceptance and final approval?
Yeah, they basically, we've asked for a waiver of full site plan
Yeah.
review, so we've asked for them to consider that waiver and then to accept the application, have the public hearing, and hopefully act on it next week.
Has there been any problem with stormwater runoff before, in the past?
None, as far as any problems out in Continental Boulevard?
Okay.
None that I'm aware of, none that's been brought to our attention by the town or by the owner. I don't think so. I'm not aware of any problems out in that part of Continental Boulevard.
I do want to make the commission aware of an email that Scott received from Ed Chase. It said, "I noticed the CODEM is on the agenda. I sent Walter comments regarding the storm drainage proposal for this site. I do not support the Hayner-Swanson storm drain treatment. I would recommend closed drainage, catch basins and pipes with a gas oil separator before the storm drainage discharges into the detention basin." And that was sent by Ed Chase. I just mentioned that as information that has come to us.
You know something, I was just wondering this, as to why,
Let me see that.
with the parking lot on the left, the entrance, you have quite a bit of green area there, large enough to handle the detention pond on that side, as to why not put the detention pond on this side rather than crossing over on the other side.
Well, I'll tell you why. And one thing I didn't highlight on this plan is, if you look closer at this plan, there are trees, existing trees, all throughout here, which we're saving. We're basically cutting 1, 2, I think 3 trees to do this, but there are a lot of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs throughout here, which we're trying to work the layout around to maintain it. Over here, it's just open grass, and there's more trees over here. So we basically picked an open lawn area where we could do a little shallow excavation and not have to cut trees to do it. So that's exactly why we picked this area.
With Ed's concern was, you could take and put catch basin
I mean,
in there.
the problem is that if everything was, as I said, he's talking about putting a catch basin here. I mean, one catch basin is more than adequate. As I said, I mean, this is a residential, I mean, you could equate it to a residential driveway. It's not much more than that. A single catch basin here would accommodate that, but the problem that I'm finding, and I just got a comment, he didn't mention the gas oil separator, but if you put a catch basin in, it's not an issue to put a gas hood in the structure. But the problem I'm finding, and if I can overcome it, is that to try to get a pipe from this catch basin beyond everything that's running through here. And it's proven to be challenging, and I don't believe it's going to work. But as I said, I've just gotten this comment from Mr. Chase, and I'm taking a look at it.
I was wondering, is it possible to put the catch basin, the detention pond, right in front of the parking lot with that green area there?
Out here?
Yes. Is there enough room there?
It's
Because it's not a very big detention pond. It's not holding that much water.
no, again.
What I like about this one and where it is, Eber, is that my understanding is that in particular, and we've expressed our concerns a number of times, is about the hydrocarbons, the gas and the oil coming off of a parking lot. The hydrocarbons, as they run across an area like that and get into a detention pond, will actually be biodegraded in many instances before they ever get to flow
Right, they'll be
into the street.
It'll be photodegraded, and there'll
Yeah.
be some absorption, and it'll bond
And
with
so that
sediment.
having it flow that 70, 80 feet, whatever it is, I think is important.
Yeah, I think it helps. It's
In the case of a major spill, I can see there would be a problem. If you had a car accident right out in the road and it flowed into there, that would probably be the only time I would see any large flow. There might be a problem.
Well, the only thing
But
I would
think
say,
out of a regular parking lot, considering the low amount of hydrocarbons, plus that distance that's in there, plus that it is a detention pond, I feel fairly confident that based upon what I know, it would do pretty good treatment
yeah,
of
I
the
think it would be.
hydrocarbons.
I think it would be better. I think
I'd rather
Ed's
see it.
concern is that if this isn't maintained in the winter, there might be some ice damming and whatnot, and that's true. This is going to have to be shoveled out. They can't just plow it and leave a snowbank
Yeah.
there. They're going to have
Couldn't
to.
get out of the driveway, I would think, because it's flowing back down in there. That would ice up and be a mess.
Yeah, so there's potential, and I've got to talk to the owners. If we may open this up a little, we may extend this. I mean, if I can find a way to make a catch basin work, I will. But you're right; it does take away this surface treatment that you get with just the water flowing through the grass. And I think that trying to pick it up in a catch basin here and pipe it across this whole array of services that runs through there, I think I'm gonna be running into.
You'd have to lower your catch basin, wouldn't you? 'Cause, I mean, you said it's
The detention
down
basin would have to go down about 2 feet
additional,
And,
yeah.
and whether I can still get into
Yeah.
the street system, it's very tight, but I think my main problem is running into existing services out there. I can't physically get a pipe through there without banging into other services, so this
I
is,
can understand where you're coming from there, but if I didn't think it was treating it going over to that swale, I'd say, tough, that's your problem. But I think the solution, I don't see any drawbacks to what you have there, you know, in my opinion.
What about extra flow from the existing parking lot? Now that you've got that additional parking lot, will there be flow from there into this area?
from the existing parking lot? No.
Right, isn't on the left-hand side?
No. This is completely segregated. There's a high point in the driveway right here.
Okay, so-
Everything from here over is completely segregated.
So there's no flow from the other section that's moving in there?
Well, I would suggest that you look at the catch basin to see if maybe you don't have the catch basin that low. Raise it just a little bit to have the water flow over. I'd sort of work on that.
Yeah, I'm in the process, I've just started looking at it, and what I can tell you tonight is if I can find a way to make it work, I will add a catch basin and with a gas hood, so you got an oil-water separation inside the basin, and
But
try.
that will collect any, if the water's running, you know, you get a car in there, it's got an oil leak, gas leak, that happens.
Yeah.
And it would collect it
Yeah,
there in
it's
the
a very-
catch basin before it goes over.
Yep. It'll also get, as Ann said, it will get treatment. It will, you know, as it's
I know that. but-
exposed to sunlight and exposed to, you know, any grasses in there, there'll be some uptake with the plants. There'll be,
But a catch basin can always be cleaned out.
yeah, yeah.
By
And
somebody.
the
By
hydrocarbons,
somebody.
they bond with the sand and the sediment that comes off the parking lot. And then when the basin is maintained, then that material is removed.
That was one of the pieces of information that came out of that stormwater treatment center, because they measure what comes in from their parking lot into each of their various treatment systems, and they measure what goes out. And they were finding that just the hydrocarbons basically were not an issue. That what came off of a parking lot was taken care of by the natural process, basically breakdown. I guess actually bacteria too also
Yeah.
reacted with it, and without catch basins, with it just flowing into places like this, vegetated ones, hydrocarbons were not flowing off the site.
Yeah.
Large volume, yeah, but a standard parking lot that has cars, buses, trucks in it.
Yeah, and this is going to be cars only, no deliveries, no
Yeah.
trucks.
So I'm not that concerned. I think it'd be nice if a catch basin gets in there with an oil water separator, but I'm not that concerned that it has to be in there.
Well, the thing is, I'm concerned about this letter because it doesn't give any reason. All
Right.
he's saying, he doesn't like it, or he's, but I think there should be a reason. If not,
Well,
because there's no reason, I don't think we should even have any credence with it.
Well,
I'm just presenting what came to me tonight.
I
so
mean,
that you have in front
I
of
can
you.
tell you what I understand is reason, and I haven't talked with Ed directly, but I think he worded it a little different in the memo that I got through the planning office, is that I think his concern is that there will be some potential for, if this isn't properly shoveled, there'll be potential for some ice damming. As you can imagine, if they just come in with a plow truck and plow this and put a snowbank here, then if you're depending on stormwater running off that side of the driveway, if it over time gets packed snow and ice in there, then it's going to tend to pond right here, and that's what his concern is. And normally that would be a concern with us as well. It's just that we have these physical
Well, that's a
constraints that
normal-
we're trying to work with.
But that's a normal issue with any catch basin. I mean, the town
an
has
issue with it.
catch basins throughout the town roads.
Yeah, it can
and
be-
they've all got the yellow arrows marked over to them to tell DPW, open those things up so the roads drain.
Yeah.
This is gonna be the same thing, with or without a catch basin. Once again, going back to maintenance, it's gotta be maintained so that it will drain off of there,
So,
whichever's done on it.
I think,
Which
I
I
mean,
think is a key point.
yeah, I think his comment comes from, you know, wearing Public Works Director's hat, maintaining drainage systems. It's just a practical consideration on his part,
I'll
and,
go back 2 months and I wouldn't even have talked the way I did tonight.
yeah.
Well, I
As
still,
new information comes in,
Yeah.
you absorb it.
I still think, you know, I'm a little concerned about that letter too.
Yeah.
I think that perhaps a catch basin could be put in there and still leave the system the way that it is, but they can put a sort of a detention pond off on the left-hand side in the green area there that can be piped in. Would that be a possibility?
It might be, it's such a narrow area, I
I
don't,
totally disagree to that.
yeah.
I would
It's-
object to that. I would
Why-
support a motion that
Why
is
would you
here
object?
in that if the catch basin can be put in, it will. If not, this seems satisfactory to me. Maintenance is gonna be a big issue, whichever it is. That small area over in there, I believe that's snow storage. It's a very narrow area right along the edge of the road.
Yeah, and actually, he had
I'm
a,
looking at the amount of area planned here, treating hydrocarbons, reducing that amount of area, treating them, I think would raise concerns in my part.
So we ready for a motion? I mean, you can vote it up, and I just move that we would recommend approval as designed, period.
Second.
I would like to state, though.
Is there a
that-
second? We could discuss it. Is there
Yeah.
a second to that?
Yes.
Okay, now we can
Okay.
discuss the motion.
I would modify that slightly, saying that we understand that the catch basin will be incorporated into it if at all possible. And whether it be installed or not, that the owner of the parcel or tenant, whoever it is going to have to make sure that it's kept clean, maintenance issue again. Because I'm hearing him say they're gonna try
Yeah.
to put a catch basin in. And I agree with you. I don't think it needs a catch basin, but if they're gonna do it, fine. But if it doesn't go in, I still,
Well, that's why I say
Approve
approve.
it.
That's why I approve it, is because we don't, we're not gonna make that decision, so.
yeah,
So it still has the same effect, but I don't,
yeah. But I'd add the
that-
maintenance issue for certain.
go ahead and put that as a note, I think that would make some sense. But that comes with everything,
I'll tell you, when I write the letters, it does not go unsaid. It always says maintenance, maintenance. Somebody has got to put in a maintenance plan, and I think it's worth writing down and putting as part of our motion
Well,
that,
we put how about
Then it works.
they put a note on the plan, that's all.
yeah, we can add maintenance
Yeah.
notes to the plans, for
Yeah.
recommended maintenance of inspections, and, usually it's quarterly inspections of catch basins and the detention basin, clean them out as the inspections
well,
dictate.
based upon what you get from Ed along the way, was concerned that in the winter, that it was kept open.
Yeah,
It's more emphasized that keep it open, whether it be catch basin there or whether it just be the flow to the sheet feed to the swale. That cut in the curb has got to be kept open so that the flow goes. Where,
exactly, yeah.
and to
So,
add that to the plan.
Well, makes sense.
I guess my task is if I can, I'm not sure if you're in the middle of the motion, so I don't know.
Well,
if
we were.
I don't know.
But we do it sort of informally anyhow.
I don't know, I still have the concern that Ed has about it. I never thought about it. But, he's an engineer. He works with this all the time. And I would rather that Ed accepts his plan for the catch basin, if it's possible to put in, before I would take and approve it. And I'm not going to vote for it the way that it's presented.
Any other comments?
I don't have any comments, no.
Call for a vote. All in favor of Bob's motion, which was to accept this with the understanding that perhaps the catch basin will go in, if it can,
If I can.
no matter either A or B or above. A maintenance note will be needed to ensure that the doesn't clog up in the winter, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 3-1-0. Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, agenda. What did I do with my agenda? There it is. Old business. Horse Hill Nature Preserve Subcommittee report. Anything, Bob?
We haven't meet next week.
Next week, okay.
Or, in December, only meeting once, so we meet next Monday, so we'll have a report after that.
So that's 12/18, yeah,
Yeah, the
okay.
18th, yeah.
Okay, presentation of the minutes. We got a whole bunch of minutes to take care of here. We got minutes from October 23rd, which Scott emailed out to you. Take a look at those first. Any additions, corrections? Whatever on those?
I move we accept the minutes as printed.
Okay,
Second?
seconded by Bob. All in favor? Aye.
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 You in favor? Aye. Okay. 4-0-0. I wasn't sure if you were going, if you'd made that meeting, if you were gonna abstain because you hadn't made the meeting, and I didn't have it in front of me to know that. Sorry, Eber. November 13th, we have public minutes. Any comments on those? Motion to approve.
Make a motion, we approve.
Seconded by,
Since I wasn't there, Eber needs a second.
well, you can second it, you just can't
second.
vote on it.
Second. That doesn't seem right.
I know, it's screwy, but that's it.
All right.
Necessity.
Right, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Abstained.
Oh, you're gonna,
Well, I didn't make the meeting.
okay, so it'd be 2 abstentions then, if I,
Doesn't pass, though. Weren't you there, Eber?
You were there. You're there as,
Still a majority, 2-0, right?
well,
you're here as being present. Maybe that should be corrected then.
Not on the,
Oh, that's right, yeah, that's
On
right.
on the
November
13th?
13th?
Yes, you were, yeah. So it's the next one you weren't there, huh?
13th, yeah, we have you present
oh, no,
on
I'm
the
looking
13th.
at the next one.
Right.
27th.
Okay, so we'll change that to
Oh,
Eber approves it, so it's 301. Okay. Okay, on the 27th,
There we go.
the public minutes. We had Bob, myself, Doug, and Walter. Okay. Any changes? If not, a motion.
Move to accept minutes of the 27th?
Seconded by Walter.
Second. Yep.
All in favor? Say aye, aye. And Eber is
I'm
staying.
abstaining on this one.
Okay, we'll allow you to do that one, Eber. We got enough minutes here, I know how you can get confused. I see, that's why I looked at you at the October one, because I didn't have
I was looking
I
at
didn't have it, and I knew you weren't at one of them. Okay, then we have November 13th, non-public. Those were the ones that
Yeah.
Bob was not present at.
I'll move to approve them anyway.
Yes. Second.
No changes or corrections on those? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Abstain.
301. Abstention then, we go to November 27th, the non-public.
Move to approve.
Of course, you've checked all the numbers. They're correct, right?
I wrote the
Every
minutes.
number, okay. All right. Just wanna
That
make
does
sure
not mean they are correct,
the
does it,
number's
Scott?
correct.
We do it back and forth and.
I have had interesting times with the two tax map parcel identifications, one being /2 and the other being /5. I even found myself today doing it, looking at them, looking at putting down 5 and typing in 2, so,
Oh.
but yes, I went back and read these because
I checked them too. I checked
I
them.
drove Scott nuts on one of the things the other day.
It was a fun thing, so it wasn't.
Oh, I know it. I know you had fun. It was research into deeds, so he went hog wild. So-
Okay, but at the top, you got 5A0052.
Yeah, well, as to the format of the numbers, we shouldn't be specific as to information within here if we can't. Because remember, these are sealed minutes. Specific parcels and prices
Oh,
were
okay.
part of
Oh,
our
okay,
non-public.
the second line, is that correct with the 4 digits to the parcel ID?
Actually, the parcel, the second line,
Yes,
where it says.
At the end.
There's one too many digits in the second line, where it says, Mr.
Right.
Powell reported the parcel appraisals were received. The 2 parcels were appraised. The appraisals came in at X number of dollars for, that parcel number is
right,
wrong.
correct.
That, the last digit should be X'd out of there.
What paragraph?
The second line.
First paragraph, second line.
Yeah.
The parcel is 005, not 0052. You see
You
it?
got it?
This is the November, I'm sorry,
November 27th.
November 27th. Actually, maybe mine are different, I don't know. So, second line, tax map parcel,
The appraisals came in at X dollars for, and it lists the parcel is 0052. It should be 005. There's an extra digit in there. Actually, I think what happened is I corrected, I went to correct the 2 to 5 and put the 5 in, but didn't take out the 2.
oh,
But Scott's is different?
mine is different, yeah, so,
That was-
yeah, okay, well, maybe they got a different draft, okay.
I know, that's the one you sent out.
Okay,
Throw that one away.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so we made that change if it needed to be changed in
Right.
the official ones.
Okay, yeah.
So there was.
This is void, okay.
So there was a motion to accept that with that correction?
Second.
No, I mean, you made that motion, I can't
Oh.
make a motion. On our bylaws, I
Oh,
can't
I
make
thought somebody made the
motions.
motion.
They did.
Why, oh,
did.
Bob did?
Bob did,
Oh, okay,
yes.
Bob did make the motion.
Yes,
Okay, and you seconded, all in
With the
favor,
correction,
say
yeah.
aye.
aye.
Aye,
Aye.
and Ibra abstains, because Ibra was not there. Whew. Thank heavens we made it through there.
It's all formatted right now.
You got, on the 13th, is this,
Yeah, let's double check, make sure that's the same one.
this is
You know, you talk about maintenance and keeping things up, what we have to remember is that, like when we have now announced, since we have announced that we are purchasing the Campo parcel, we should go back, once it's approved, we should go back and unseal all of the non-public minutes on it. And remember to do it whenever we come to one of those.
All right.
I try to remember. Maybe you can help me as we go. Okay, we got those all.
We'll put that in today's minutes.
There's a lot of those too, so.
So make a note to
There's a lot of those little reminders that somehow get lost somewhere.
unseal the sealed minutes.
Yeah, well, I think I did one once about 6 months afterwards or a year afterwards when I remembered it. I have no
Declassifying.
Yeah, declassifying it.
right.
The only correspondence is the seedling catalog for from the state forest, so it's getting to be that time to think about what we want to do for our distribution of trees and/or shrubs in the spring.
I think last year worked out well. I don't know. Those, what we set up, what we got last year.
I can dig them out and bring it in, and we can look at them, compare it against what's on the list here, but if you want to do it for next time
Yeah,
around.
why don't we do that, and then we'll decide what to do.
Because
But those trees went, well, we didn't have any left over last year. We all went, every single one of them.
I had a number of people say they liked the idea.
Yeah, well, something different, yeah, we had some good.
Because I even had some say, hey, we can plant some, that some of the town sites if you have any left,
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah.
Public comment? No public? Commissioners' comments? Eber, we're gonna start with Eber tonight. He's been quiet.
I don't have anything.
No comments. Bob?
Well, on this, that old Kings Highway, is that something we're gonna,
Well, let the Horse Hill worry about, and let the subcommittee.
okay,
Basically, the Heritage Commission is proposing some changes to,
well, I know they need to, once they think of what they want to do, they need to make a recommendation to
Yeah.
us, so.
they were asking me
So hopefully the next
for my
meeting will-
opinion, or the opinion of the Conservation Commission. I said, the only way you're gonna get an opinion of the Conservation Commission is to bring it before us. Because I'm not going to speak for the Conservation Commission when it has not considered it.
And I have taken some time to put together a presentation for Ruth Rule, and he's reviewed it, and I'm gonna give Andy a copy of that so that you guys can look at it and type thing.
I have made comments back and forth to Ernie, to Tim, well, not to Tim Tenay, but to Ernie and others, and I've said, okay, I made my personal comments. Now, you're gonna take it from here.
Did you send those back to him? Oh,
Well, Ernie had asked me some comments, asked me to review an earlier plan.
okay,
'Cause he and I had discussed it, well, I think you were there once when we were talking about it.
all right.
And so I gave him some preliminary ideas from a personal level.
Did you actually write them? Give them,
Yes,
how long ago was that?
3 weeks or more.
You didn't send me a copy of that, though.
Okay.
That's all right. Just
See if you can remember to send him a copy of that. I probably sent you the one
Yeah, but
that
just
went
so
back to Ernie.
just so I can, at the meeting next week, I can
sure.
see what was included, what's,
Yeah,
if they're considering those or not considering.
There is a publication called A Hard Road to Travel,
Yes, I'll get that.
okay, which is many of the issues. What is a Class 6 road, which Walt and I were discussing today as we walked on Old Blood Road. Because what they're proposing to do is they want to maintain that Class 6 road. And it becomes a question, how can you maintain it? Because by definition, a Class 6 road is not maintained and cannot be maintained as a Class 6 road. You'd have to go to that Class 5 road
Five
to
for the
maintain it,
town.
or
Right.
there's some other things that can be done, actually.
Well,
An alternative is to have it declared an emergency access road, or to change it to a trail or something. But
That's kind of what the presentation, it's probably about 32 pages. The reason is there's colored versions of the right of way and wetland and everything, and
they didn't bring it up in time to put it on the agenda.
But I thought you said that if you take it out of class 6, it goes to the owners, so.
Well, see, now this is different. You can, the governing body can declare it an emergency road. And that means it can be maintained for that portion that has been declared an emergency road. Or it can be changed to a different classification under
They can-
trails.
Yeah,
It's all in A Hard Road to Travel,
that's where the.
which is a very interesting book.
yeah.
Because it actually was prepared by the, what is it? It's the legal division of the municipal organization. Yeah, municipal association.
And it's only applicable to New Hampshire?
This is actually written by that,
Yeah.
about the New Hampshire rules of
Right,
roads. That's where class 1, 2, 3, and 4 are
I have a
explained,
book
and
just
6.
on classes of roads.
Oh, it is. Yeah, well, I mean,
Amazing.
as I was mentioning to you, there are a lot of issues of how did it become a class 6 and what are the rights of the abutters and what can and can't be done with them. So it's quite an issue.
So that subcommittee meets Monday, so they'll
Okay.
be going over this, and if they come up with a,
Well, we meet again January
this will be, we'll come up with a following meeting.
15th, probably.
8th or the 22nd?
Second Monday. 8th then, okay.
Well, as I
This will
said,
come up then.
if I had more time, I would have been able to have
Yeah,
a copy of that.
It wasn't going to end up on today's agenda
we
anyhow,
couldn't
so
do it.
don't worry about that.
It's very long, so
I knew we had other things on the agenda.
I went to a law lecture the past couple months. Phil Strait was there as well. And
Right.
excellent talk on road status, emergency lanes, and I've got some copies from that book as well.
Well, this thing you're talking about is what? This,
The whole Old Kings Highway section for the, the emergency lane status,
well, this report, what you said, you talking about a report that?
Yeah, it's a PowerPoint report that I put together that I presented to Ruth Rule, who's the chairman of the Heritage Commission. So that
She- that
have
she put
something to
together.
work with the review, and she worked in review. We just had the Heritage Commission meeting last Wednesday.
Oh, okay. So that's their
Yeah.
report.
Yeah,
That was one of the things I've said all along is somebody's got to go back here and look at the rules that govern all of this and determine whether it can be done before you make the proposal that it be done.
So you have a copy of that.
So Scott's been working with the Heritage
I'll put it
and
together, and I'll be able to get the information for you. It's a 3-phase report. The first phase is the only thing that's going to affect Horse Hill.
Okay,
The other
so
phase is
can
gonna
I get
come in.
that?
Yeah.
I can pick it up, I get it before next Monday's meeting.
I'll do the best I can, yeah. I'll work on it a little bit tomorrow. I got another project for the planning board I've been trying to get done too, so, but.
Or is it just, is it a PowerPoint that I can just put, you can put
I
on disk?
have an abbreviated version that's a PowerPoint, and I also have an actual, there's things that you can't PowerPoint because you need to actually detail them on the maps and
Right.
color them. And
Okay.
So just, so I've got kind of 2 versions. I could email you the PowerPoint tomorrow morning, the abbreviated version.
Yeah, why don't you,
And
yeah.
then I'll get the expanded version for you so you can have it.
All right, good, great, thanks.
And Debbie brought that up. I had a concern with it being a butter to the
I
Old
would think
Kings
so.
Highway. And she said that the abutters would be notified. And I just want to make sure that that's done with the abutter. I know that my section is not going to be affected. It's just Palmyra Drive up to the end of Old Kings Highway before it comes a regular road.
Well, actually, it's gonna stop at the Watonic Bowman initially.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's abutters on the other end. And I
Okay.
just would like to make sure that the abutters are made aware of it. If they do have a concern, they can bring it to the commission if we approve it.
we don't do that.
Yeah.
The town council is the only one that's authorized to change it.
But what'll happen,
If the town council decides to take it as an agenda item, then they will follow whatever the rules are.
Well, wouldn't it be good to have
they're gonna have to give us,
commission, wouldn't it be good to have the Horse Hill Commission know?
They're getting a presentation by this is a Heritage Commission project.
Yep.
Because we manage Horse Hill, I feel that they have to make our subcommittee and us aware of it to see whether we want to recommend it or not recommend it. Then the Heritage Commission does with it what they intend to do. If they want to take it to the town council, this is their project.
but what Eber's saying is that when it comes to us though, we can, when we start talking about it, to decide what we want to do, there could be public comments here on that.
I think the presentation would give you, the booklet I put together would explain things a little bit more. It's a long history of the whole project, but phase 1 would be the Horse Hill area that you guys would be affected. Phase 2, which would be Eber's section, I think the most they'd be doing is maybe putting a sign up or something, so they wouldn't really be doing anything major. The whole highway's been delineated to Severance Bridge Road up to Natticook Road, and there's just a way, it's already been laid out by a surveying firm, and all the site plans have been pulled, and we have a pretty good idea. And then when we hit the Conservation Commission managed area of the rest of the, that would be another point where you guys would be involved on that, or hopefully working together, and that would be in the phase 3 section. When you see the plan, you can look at it.
And our concern would mainly be, does it meet the definitive plan parameters?
Yeah, and the Shattuck Hill, potentially the sidewalk project in lieu of.
If there's public comment needed, I'd rather let the Heritage Commission, this is their project.
Right.
It's their responsibility to get the input on it. They're getting input from us.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I think.
But I thought you said we're talking about, we have to make a comment about recommending something. Now, if we're gonna do that, then.
Well, we can do whatever we want to do. We could ignore it and say,
Oh, well,
it
yeah.
doesn't go with the definitive plan.
What I'm saying, but I would think that if we have to make a decision on recommending something, then at our meeting, when we talk about it, then certainly anybody that wants to come to the meeting and make comment on it which, you know, allows us to also consider what they have to say.
Well, I think
We'll get to that
the
point.
question before us is, does that proposal meet the definitive plan that we are charged in using as our directive to manage that parcel?
Right, but you can have public comment that could say it doesn't meet that. I mean, we could be, when it gets to that point, we could be sitting here discussing that, and I'm saying it does, and Walt's saying it does, you say it doesn't, and Eva says it doesn't. So, right? What I'm just saying is that, for Eva's point, is that
But the public comment doesn't,
it may,
the abutter wouldn't have anything to say as to whether it does or doesn't meet the definitive plan.
sure, they would have as much information as we do about it, and it's
To be
a,
honest, the Old Kings Highway, I think
It's
we're
a comment.
talking about filling holes, so I don't think.
And actually, basically, there aren't any abutters to it.
Right, yeah, for the area that we're working on, for the section you're concerned on.
I do not want to
And that's
open it up
included.
to a public hearing with
Definitive
a lot of
plan.
comment.
But if we put it on the agenda, as
Somebody
a,
can come and they can make
Then
comment
they
in
can
public
say that.
comment.
That's what I'm
They
talking
can
about.
make in public.
Yeah.
correct.
Well, that's as always,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's, I think that's all
It's
he
an
was saying.
agenda
Yeah.
item. If they want to come as a member of the public and take the opportunity to
on
go
it.
on public comments,
that's what
yeah.
that's what I'm saying.
But there, as you will see, there are basically no abutters.
There won't be any public comment.
That's a butter on phase one, but there are butters on phase two.
Right, and that's.
I don't know anything about phase one
Yeah,
and two,
You'll
Eber.
have to get the information.
I don't know anything about phase one and two. That's why I refuse.
But that would probably be the Heritage Commission then, who would be.
It's there. This is,
Comment there, yeah.
this project, they took to the council, and the council said, okay, it's a Heritage Commission project, go forth and do, and make recommendations to us.
It was voted on and approved.
Yeah, so it's a,
The Heritage
you know,
Commission to manage the Old Kings Highway, yes. Yeah.
we fall into it because does it meet the definitive plan that we're charged with following concerning Horse Hill?
And that's in the presentation too, the definitive plan and the master plan, I included that in there as well, so that should, hopefully, and as I said,
Not a
Ruth Rule has
problem.
been meeting with town manager and other
Yeah.
individuals to make
But-
sure that.
But yeah, if somebody sits in here in the audience,
Oh, sure.
they will have an opportunity to speak at some time during the night. Yep,
So it will eventually get to us,
Right.
sometime.
after the Heritage Commission has made their recommendation to us.
We might get it before that.
No, the Heritage Commission and/or basically, our subcommittee is charged to presenting their recommendation to us. That's their charge.
Right.
And you have a member of the Heritage Commission on your subcommittee.
So
And she
if
wants
they
to
bring
probably
it and say, here's our recommendation of what we should do, and the Heritage Commission is going to outline their plan, and we recommend that you do this because it meets the definitive plan, we either say yes or no.
Yeah, and that's an opportunity for anybody to also speak here at the time. That's all.
And the usual, meetings are always open to the public,
Right,
and it'll be an agenda item.
Yeah, yeah.
Probably fall under Horse Hill Nature Preserve Subcommittee report,
Yes, probably would.
and I'll put it in parentheses so that we know it's that subject,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
for those who don't abut it.
Well, when it comes up, I'm sure anybody that's gonna be interested will be, will be notified that, it's gonna be coming up. They follow these things,
They already been talked to.
But I'd like to see what the plan phase two is. I haven't seen it. I'd like to know what it is.
I don't know if there's a phase two, Eber. I've never seen a phase two.
This is a drafted information report. I needed to get something down on paper so that they could get the project going. I didn't want the Heritage Commission to be delaying your projects for the Horse Hill Nature Preserve by saying, let's wait until we get the whole Old Kings Highway thing, because it's a more complicated project than just doing, making an emergency lane and filling some holes, which is basically all it is in Horse Hill at this point.
Yep.
There's other things that are involved with.
We will consider what they bring
Right.
forth to us. If it does not involve anything further, all we're concerned with is how it affects Horse Hill.
Right.
Make a motion that we adjourn?
No?
No.
Did you have any other comments?
no, that's enough.
Oh,
I did have a couple.
oh.
Sorry about that. You can't get rid of me.
I
I will not accept your motion,
generally
excuse
at the
me.
end, but you always ask Scott at the last one.
Oh, I've already had said my.
Well, I'm not done
I
yet.
got my project.
No, I asked him to expand on that. Just be quiet. Let me finish the few items and then we'll go home. As I mentioned earlier, Originally, we had a budget that we were going to consider, and I sent a copy of it out and sort of proportioned it out. In talking to Walter Warren, whose community development budget ours is part of, he had to submit it to the new town manager a couple days after we made our discussion here. We discussed it. He added $5,000 to the Horse Hill Nature Preserve portion of the budget, and that's what he submitted. And I sent you a revised copy, emailed yesterday probably, and that has gone to Walter to be concluded in discussions within staff, and then to whatever it comes up to be to present it to the town council.
What was the reason for the additional $5,000?
He thought it should be the same amount that he had requested the previous year, and could be justified by projects that are called for in the definitive plan.
Okay.
I sent you out all a copy of goals and asked for any feedback as to how you would change my words. I didn't hear any, so I will go on assumption that that's okay, and you'll probably see it in the town report. Which
Oh,
I
yeah,
am,
wait a minute, we need to add one thing to that, is the Lawrence Road. You know, we do have that responsibility of the cleanup of Lawrence Road. And we didn't,
Oh, the cleanup?
one of our goals.
we didn't put that in as a goal, that's just one of the things we do.
Well,
To
It
continue
wasn't,
to,
goal was to be certain key items. You know, our whole goal discussion didn't include that. I put that in as one of the things that we have volunteered to do, is to clean that part of the road.
okay.
But it's not a key goal that we would change from annual, year to year. I sent you all information on the Lower Merrimack River LAC. This is the state appointed committee that oversees what happens to the Lower Merrimack River. Doug has indicated he's interested and he's going to follow up with George May, but there are 3 open positions on it if anybody has interest. If you have any additions to the parcels of interest, if you want to talk to me and we can determine their tax map numbers, and I can then work with Scott and we can get numbers put to them, and I can get them put in the spreadsheet for discussion next time around, that will expedite that project. It's kind of got pushed to the back, but we need to get it into some kind of format. So that's going to be an agenda item next time around. Walter and I walked GPS today. Walt and I walked GPS, or I walked and he carried the GPS. Every now and then he fell down with the GPS. We did the Campo parcel boundary line behind the school, and then we GPS the trail, and the hope is that that can end up in the system within the town so that we can know exactly where that trail is relative to the boundary of that parcel.
would you use for a GPS?
Well, just a little
Yours?
handheld I
The one
have,
you
yeah.
got there?
Interestingly enough, we did find the pin at the back end of that boundary line, which we had not been able to find before. I think I mentioned it earlier, but I'm not sure if you were here or not. Meridian was out there doing the survey work on the parcel today and marked some of it that we saw. I don't know how much. I probably will be back out there Thursday or Friday walking it if anybody wants to walk that boundary line off of behind Marty Drive, because that's the one that I have no idea where it goes. You may want to waders in that job. But if you're interested, let me know. Just a reminder, Wednesday night is the town council. Their agenda is to hear a presentation from representatives of Pennachuck Waterworks on the Sauhegan, the Merrimack Dam removal project. That's their agenda item for Wednesday night here at 7. I am on their agenda to present the Campo parcel purchase on Thursday night. It's a three-phase request. One, to approve the purchase. Two, to designate it and two other parcels as part of the Greater Woods Town Forest, which the council can do. It doesn't have to be a warrant article as previously. That they actually designate those three additional parcels to go along with the one that's already been designated, and to put it all under management of us, as is the single parcel. And the third part of that is to present information on the school trail project and seek their approval, because we need a letter to support the grant, allowing them to do the work on town land as opposed to school land. They're two different entities, and even though it seems crazy, but you have to do it. Walt and I also met with Ann LaCroix and Chris, and right, I just drew my blank.
Yeah, Lentz,
Rick.
Rick.
Right. Concerning the grant, and we went over some of the finer points that we're going to have to refine out, which is what, if any, restrictions would be applied, attached to the land as a result of taking this grant. I had researched both the federal site and the state site on it, and inquired of the state if there are any restrictions, and the answer that I got back this afternoon supported what I had determined from the website, that basically, no. We have to spend the money for what, or the school has to spend the money within the 2-year time frame to do what they say they're going to do, but basically there are no other restrictions, with the minor one I consider of it has to be open to the public.
Yeah, they had been concerned whether there had to be yearly maintenance.
Yes.
So that now they don't have to worry about that.
Well, we'd still
But
like
they
them to
still
worry
would
about
should
that.
put it
They're
in,
approaching,
yeah.
the parent-teachers organization to see if they can also schedule some maintenance. And I'm going to have to work with the school administration to sort out how we coordinate this whole thing as the first time through. So thank heavens we have done it with the easement, so that both parties know that the other one can't just shut them off of it, make it the long-term agreement, however it is, because there seemed to be some concern about some of the people, particularly in the parent group, as to, well, maybe the town just decides to shut us off and not let us go on the trail, and we've spent all this money, so. But it's issues worth clarifying, and we also got to clarify how the payment schedules would go. And they are writing their grant between Christmas and New Year's, and somehow I agreed to write the environmental section of the grant request.
There was a sigh of relief there. But also the parking was also the big concern.
Yeah, that was another, well, that was it,
If the school doesn't allow people to go and park there.
We want it clear, that the parking is open to anybody who uses the trail, and the trail's open to anybody, It's open to the public, period. And so that's our concerns, and which I think are, they're concerns, but I don't see large concerns.
Minor.
Yeah.
They just have to be worked out.
Is it time?
Scott, you got anything to add?
Nope.
Oh, come on. Tell us about the history of that one parcel which I put the wrong tax map parcel number on.
Strictly acceptance waivers today.
Scott did what he wanted to do, because I transposed the numbers.
Yeah.
So he went searching back on this one parcel, which of course I knew Scott loves to do. He must have spent all day on it.
Not too bad, actually. Everything's electronic these days.
He said, his report back to me, he says, I've been able to trace back no further than 1743. Would that be sufficient?
I think so.
Well, the funny thing is, the history of Bedford, there's actually a map, a surveyed map, delineating little rectangular parcels.
I got the one for Danbury.
Yeah.
What was interesting, I guess as a sidelight here, on the greater parcels out there, Scott came up with a subdivision map that laid out all of the individual parcels in 1972, which threw some more interesting highlights onto is, does this one parcel, well, actually, the one parcel I said didn't go into Amherst because there's, trust didn't own it in Amherst. Well, yes, it's the same parcel, but in Amherst, for some reason, they have different owners listed. However, we now have a copy of the deed, which says exactly who the owners are. It's been interesting tracking this, these back, because a lot of this was done in the 70s. And nobody's looked at a lot of the paperwork. And then on top of that, one of the side parcels that affects the trustees changed hands within the past 6 months, roughly. And we turned up an easement that we didn't know about, so.
For us?
From the little parcel across one of the other parcels. So landlocked parcel, there actually was an easement there that was done way back in the 70s again. So
Who had the easement?
the owner of the small parcel.
Oh, so they go back and forth?
Yep. Yeah, 50 foot right away. I don't know how they're ever gonna do it because if I remember right, it goes right through wetlands, but. So it's been interesting, and I appreciate Scott's help in trying to dig up all of this background information so that we can finally get around to negotiating, which I think we're about ready to do. We exchanged emails again today between the two parties, and I told them what our...
Offer was?
No, I didn't say that. Now, they actually wanted to, initially suggested we settle on the one parcel before we went to the complicated parcel. And I presented our position that this is, you know, how we were going to handle it, and said, much as it would simplify it, it won't. So,
One's not worth much without the other.
yeah, so it's the
What it boils down to.
fun and games. We'll see what the messages bring.
Good. Okay.
Come on, Walt, you're going to wait all night?
Right, every time I said it. I make a motion, I adjourn.
All in favor?
So, all right, we can outvote Andy, just make a